This schoolgirl decides. It's a nice day to get some attention by standing on the edge of a bridge. But she won't get it today. Right beneath her, a massive iceberg suddenly appears, with a man trapped inside. It catches everyone's attention, and it turns out this man is an ancient hero from thousands of years ago. When the authorities hear about it, Rajiam is brought to a facility where they make sure he's strapped down tightly. To prevent any movement, everyone's curious to learn which era this handsome fellow belongs to. One guess is that he might be from the Goryeo dynasty. Yoon So-young, the director of the Secret Intelligence DLS research, who works directly under the president, oversees the case, seeing the perfectly preserved body. He's sure that this ancient person can help humanity take a leap into preserving the bodies through cryogenic methods. The assistant of Sang-young isn't sure if restraining the guy this much is actually necessary. He fears that once this ancient dude wakes up, he won't appreciate being restrained. But the director isn't taking any chances. After all, this man's body can't be compared to that of modern humans. It's so different. He can hardly be classified as the same species. Plus, every analysis so far has subverted their expectations. And Sang-young is pretty darn sure there are more surprises to come. The assistant, however, doesn't mean to seem complacent. What he's trying to say is that this guy, a gift sent by their ancestors to future generations, shouldn't be treated so harshly. Still, Sang-young isn't ready to let him go, unless they're 100 sure he's not some kind of disaster waiting to happen. Of course, the assistant finds Sang-young's concerns laughable, but it seems like this idiot's about to learn the hard way that you should never ignore the advice of your seniors. That ancient guy literally tears through all the restraints, like they're nothing more than toilet paper. Before we witness the disaster, let's take a look at the bustling city. On the road, there's a jerk and his gold digger girlfriend, cruising in his sports car. This dude is speeding down the highway, like he owns the road, but soon enough, this poor bastard is overtaken by a mere ancient guy, who's just woken from a long slumber. The guy is literally running at 80 kilometers per hour. He's making that red Lamborghini look like a donkey cart with his insane speed. Not only can he outrun sports cars, but he can also make sharp turns without slowing down, causing massive crashes among the traffic. All the Gen Z guys pull out their cameras and start recording this unprecedented scene they're witnessing. Now let's see things from Rajam's perspective. He's having a hard time believing what he's seeing. He's running around in a place he's never been before. It's so bizarre and surreal that he's sure this can't be a dream. The last thing he remembers is trying to protect his mistress from those assassins. Suddenly he comes across police cars blocking his path, finally bringing him to a halt. The police officers immediately try to take control of the situation, under orders from higher UPS. This around Rajam, who's standing still, unusually lost in his thoughts. He clearly remembers falling into the waterfall with his arch-nemesis Okyeon Chak. Rajam is a brave warrior who literally slayed 300 assassins alone while being cornered at the edge of a cliff. The guy wreaked havoc for 4 straight days, continuously piling up the dead bodies of anyone who dared to come closer to his mistress, whom he's been protecting with his life. Eventually, after clearing wave after wave of assassins, Rajam faced the final boss and was bested. But instead of dying alone, he dragged his final enemy along with him. Jumping off the cliff, the two fighters exchange final words before falling into the icy cold waters below. Then an officer sneaks up on him, insisting that he doesn't resist arrest, especially since doing so will only make things harder for him. But Ryugam's mind is too occupied to pay attention to the officer's words. As far as he remembers, he died back then. But if he isn't dead, and seeing all this chaos around him, the only thing that crosses his mind is that he's probably under the influence of an illusion cast by Okyeon's follower Yoon Un-hee, who specializes in messing with people's minds. With that in mind, He brushes the officers off with his bare hands, sending them flying. He desperately wants to wake up from this illusion. One of the officers shoots a taser at him, but Ryojim just grabs the electrical needles with his bare fingers well. The concept of lightning isn't new to him. As he's distracted, he gets hit with a barrage of needles, causing his muscles to react to the electricity. Instinctively, the officers think they've overwhelmed this ancient bitch. With their tasers, little do they know, Ryugam simply grabs the wires, jerks them so hard that the officers lose their grips on the taser guns. Then he swings the guns back at the soldiers, sending them scattering like bowling pins. The general public is in utter awe. After all, seeing the police getting their asses handed to them by a guy who isn't even moving from his spot is absolutely insane shock. Ryujim is literally toying with these guys, like they're nothing more than trash bags. His main goal is to find the key in this world that will help him break the illusion he's currently trapped in. More and more police arrive, but Ryujin is so powerful that he crushes the ground beneath him with sheer force, sending all the cars flying. All these guys are nothing more than an annoyance to him. So to avoid, he simply leaps high into the air like Hulk and jumps away. This display of immense strength leaves the soldiers wondering if this guy is even human. We then cut to Jong Min-woo, the service director of the National Intelligence. He's on the phone, fuming at the lack of results from his personnel. By now he's sure that the special forces won't be able to do jack shit. In this case, let alone the police officers. The guy on the other end of the phone is Jong Song-young, the team leader of this operation. We saw him at the facility before. After witnessing how this ancient dude broke through the restraints and wreaked havoc, he agrees with the director. Director suddenly calms down when his senior, sitting in the back seat, takes full responsibility, admitting that it's his fault. He's confident there's nothing to worry about. After all, they're dealing with an ancient dude who's supposedly powerless against modern weaponry. As he says this, the main highway is packed with military vehicles, tanks, military Hummers, even helicopters filling the sky. Seriously, with all this military power, they're treating our guy like a Godzilla-level threat. Anyway, Chul Krugum stands at the top of a building, completely surrounded. Even the rooftop is swarming with armed police forces. Now that these guys are challenging him, he's ready to show them what he is made of. But before initiating the fight, he grabs a broomstick as his weapon of choice. Yet he's made up his mind. He's going to give these guys a run for their money. With nothing but a broomstick, one of the soldiers shoots a bullet right near his feet, thinking it'll intimidate him. This officer is sure that an ancient martial artist like him won't be able to go up against a gun. But it looks like Chuck Ruggiero is about to prove him utterly wrong before the showdown can start, and we witness the chaos that follows. The president himself decides to show up and meet the guy. Once the president steps onto the roof, his concerned security detail warns him to keep his distance. As the representative of the country, Kuk Yikan has personally come to meet this relic of the past. He tells the officers to lower their guns. Of course, being the ancient guy he is, Cha Ryong catches on that the president likely has the standing of a king. First, Jikin expresses his apologies from the bottom of his heart for how they've treated their guest from the past. Since Cha Ryong isn't aware of his surroundings, the president briefs him about how this current time is the future, and the place is South Korea. But before going any further, the president extends his hand for a handshake. He wants to escort Cho Rock-jayam to a better place. Before they talk more, as the president holds out his hand, Cho Rock-jayam just stands there unmoving. Every officer watches carefully, trying to predict his next move. But Choi Yu-gi-oh subverts everyone's expectations when he swings his stick, aiming to slice the president's head off. As far as the ancient guy is concerned, the president might be the key to breaking out of this illusion. The officers immediately go bonkers, locking their aim on his head. Miraculously, the president is still alive. and orders everyone to cease fire. Meanwhile, Choke Ryujim is convinced that it's not Un he's doing. You see, she was the greatest illusionist in Goryeo, so there's no way she'd create an illusion where his enemy doesn't suffer. Reflecting on those fights, Chuck Ryujim knows that what he felt during his encounters with the officers didn't seem like an illusion. So with everything in mind, the only conclusion he can draw is that this place is real. The scene cuts to the president's safe house, where a lavish spread of food is served to Choi Kyung-jayam. But before indulging in meaningless pleasures, Bro wants to confirm where he is. The president claims it's a secret base, a designated place for meetings like this. He insists his ancient guest indulge himself, as all the food has been prepared, according to the current era's traditions and tastes. Since Chuck Ryujim isn't taking the initiative to dig in, first the president takes it up on him and takes the first bite while eating. He asks if Choke Ryujim still has any doubts that he isn't in the future. Of course, Choke Ryujim is smart enough to figure that out by now. He is pretty darn sure that he is indeed in the future. The president is glad to hear that he understands now. It shouldn't be hard for him to understand that. The reason he's able to move, after being frozen for so long, is due to modern medical technology, something that wasn't possible back in his time. Chuck Ryujim recalls the time before he died. The poison in his body was already spreading, and he was further pierced by his arch-nemesis. Since he's the only one left here, it means all his enemies have already fallen. The president continues his rant, while he's not sure if Choi Kyung-jayam will be willing to accept the terms. The president wants to be generous enough to offer him support to help him adapt to this place. But in return, he wants Choi Kyung-jayam's cooperation. It's nothing too demanding, just a simple request to clarify. The president gestures to the director of national intelligence, and the guys quickly turn on the TV. A news reporter reports the sighting of the super strong guy. Not only is he matching the speed of cars, but he was even seen flying around the common. People have already started to connect the dots, suspecting the guy they saw flying around in the city is the same person who was found in the Han River Glacier. There are rumors spreading that the person causing chaos in the city is this same individual, and people are even calling him a superhuman. Then the reporter announces the latest news. It was all part of a movie production, and the movie director wanted the highest realism possible. Basically, the government has staged the entire news report to convince the public that the bizarre sightings were just a performance. They can't afford to let the truth get out. People aren't ready to know about a being like Choke Ryujim. After all, he's a frozen person, capable of surviving through centuries. If they experiment and study this situation, the president believes it could lead to incredible advancements. Many countries have tried to achieve this before, but so far they've only failed because they lacked the crucial thawing technology. But now Choke Ryujim has appeared as their hope. So, the president asks Choke Ryujim to cooperate with them for the sake of the country and future generations. But Choke Ryujim flatly says no, without a hint of hesitation. Of course, the president is left speechless, while Choke Ryujim proceeds toward the exit. As far as Choke Ryujim is concerned, it's bold of the president to assume he has any intention of living in this era. Since words aren't enough to convince this ancient warrior, the president decides to go with Plan B. The officers quickly line up their needle guns, aiming at Choke Ryujim, and begin bombarding him with darts. The darts strike his back precisely, but he doesn't even twitch a muscle. While Choke Ryujim may have stopped taser guns before, the director is sure this guy can't withstand tranquilizers strong enough to knock out an elephant. Well, the director may be right, but Choke Ryujim doesn't even let the darts pierce his skin. A thick layer of aura surrounds his body, preventing the needles from touching him. His inner aura accumulates in his hands. He sends the officers flying in all directions, as if they were nothing more than lightweight. Fuck dolls, this little display of power serves as a reminder to this persistent president not to pull this stunt again. Despite this, the president still isn't willing to let Choi Kyung-jae walk away that easily. Next up, enter a group of officers armed with electrical batons. Surrounding Choi Kyung-jae, without hesitation, they charge at him. But Choi Ryujin moves so fast that the officer attacking him misses completely. The other officers close in, but one guy thinks he's finally got Choi Ryujin zapped with his baton, but before the baton can electrocute him, Choi Ryujin vanishes in a blur. Just like an afterimage, he's moving so fast that he's leaving a trail of silhouettes behind him. At one point, the foolish officers realized they're no match for this guy. He didn't even attack, despite being up against armed opponents. The only thing his opponents can do is watch as he walks away unscathed. The president, after receiving the news of their failure, is having a hard time believing they lost to a single man. By now he's sure they can't capture him by force. So the only option left is to find alternative methods. After all, Chuck Ryujin is no ordinary being, and a large-scale search will likely be necessary. Suddenly, a man rushes in to report urgent news. They found the location of the guy they've been looking for, while they're not sure of the reason. He's at a very easy-to-spot place, standing on the rooftop of the tallest building. It looks like Chuck Raoul Guyam is about to jump off this high rise to claim his own life. You see, this world offers nothing to him. His life is meaningless, as he has no purpose to stay alive. The only reason he lived was to protect his mistress from enemies. But now that there's no mistress to protect and no enemies to fight, there's no reason for him to exist. He wishes he had died when he fell off the cliff. All those years ago, as he begins to descend down, something catches his eye. A face on a billboard grabs his attention instantly. It turns out, the face on the billboard looks exactly like Awakens, his final enemy, someone he was supposed to take down. His eyes widened in shock as his memory flashed back to the time he faced off against Awakens, a villain who placed his family members in an illusion to kill each other off brutally before his eyes. Unhai and Awakens worked together to fully commence the era of destruction. Upon Goryo, as everything went up in flames, the bodyguard boasted a determined glare against his nemesis Awakens, who enjoyed torturing the swordsman and promised that he would flatten the world. Awakens is single-handedly responsible for everything, even though our boy was confident that he'd killed the guy. In their final battle, it turns out the bastard is still alive in the future. This changes Ryujin's perspective on things. The existence of his enemy, in return, gives his life a meaning, a purpose. Extending his hands pointed towards the ground, the man exerts so much pressure that he breaks the fall and plants his feet on the surface. There's a lot he didn't know about, and he was determined to find out. The scene cuts to President Ji Kuan, losing his marbles after hearing that. Our boy jumped from the tallest building he could find, but the fact that his body is nowhere to be found is even more frightening than the first news he received. Luckily, they ran into a witness who ran into the guy, and according to his testimony, he simply asked about Yin Wu's information. In this world, Yin Wu is an important figure. He is the pride of Korea, a world-class movie star, renowned all over the world for his prodigious talent. From a young age, he's got good eyes on him from other continents of the world, and with the looks of a model, he's got irresistible charm. In his personality, thanks to his existence alone, his company's stock value is on a rise. And because he's the most famous star of Korea, he's raised the country's status in global standings. In other words, the dude was the definition of a great man, which is unbecoming of the description that Ryujin was waiting to hear. It's as if he feels out of place. Even more now, that Awakens' identity appears to be the opposite of the man he is supposed to be. Given the information, Ryujin suspects that there are two possibilities. Number one, this model either resembles Awakens, and number two, the guy is actually him, while gaslighting the entire world. And for some interesting reason, Ryujin is desperately hoping that it's the second possibility. Feeling the urge to meet him, he requests the kid to take him to Yanwu, which is obviously an insane request to a normal kid, who obviously can't contact a celebrity like that. Even the kid is out here thinking if he's found some kind of dumbass for asking that question. To the kid's horror, however, Rugum is not in the mood to fudge around. The dude exerts so much pressure that it shatters the glass of every screen. Rugum demands an answer from the kid, desiring a way to find Yanwu. The kid thinks he's about to get killed if he doesn't give him an answer, so he finally confesses. Hearing the model travel overseas a few years ago, Ryujin realizes that this means his target has already crossed to a different country. Let's pay a visit to the land of freedom. America. Here the model is having a nice lunch, when suddenly he gets whacked in the damn face by buff Kanye West. Over here, speaking gibberish in English, the American man demands he leave the place. Turns out that this is supposed to be just a movie scene that they're directing, so it's all chill. The director is a bit annoyed that Yanwu hasn't been in his element lately, and it's taking him longer to adapt to scenes. To make up for the fact, the confident model with his already swelled up face requests the American to hit him on the other side too. The scene is scheduled to be redone when suddenly the chandelier unpredictably breaks and topples down. Buff Kanye won't be able to release another album if it hits him, but luckily, the Korean model swoops in to save his life. In a critical moment, the staff immediately rushed in to check on their condition. They weren't expecting something like this to happen. Thankfully, they're both safe and no one got hurt. Well, except for Yanwu, who injured his arm for the most part. At the hospital, they're shocked to find that Yanwu wrecked his body just to save the other guy. Also, for his courageous act, he received a ton of gifts from everyone to speed up on his recovery. Yanwu thinks it's a good idea to share these gifts with the generous hospital staff members instead. He also apologizes for messing up the film schedule, thanks to his condition just now. But they're just happy he didn't get injured too much. Also, it comes to Yanwu's attention that filming isn't an important thing right now, especially when he hears shocking news. Back at the Blue House, President Ji Khan bids farewell to everyone, only to find our boy waiting for him, having bypassed top-tier security levels with ease. Ji Khan recalls being terrified yesterday, as only 9 hours ago, our boy showed up to his office like Batman. He came to accept the offer of cooperation that he rejected earlier only this time. He's got one condition paired alongside it, handing him a photo of Yanwu. He requests the president to help him find someone reliable, who can easily meet him in the same room as Yanwu. Chicken's ready for anything, as long as he promises full cooperation in return. Ryujin observes that the gesture of shaking hands out of trust didn't exist back in his era, but he shakes his hand anyway. Back to the present. Jikin learns that Ryojim urgently wants to see Yanwu, but won't be easy since they're so far away from him. The scene cuts to the part where they actually reach Yanwu's place of stay. The model is shocked to meet the president and the person he's brought alongside him. Yanwu introduces himself in kind, while Ryujin is high on guard, because it's time to see whether this guy is truly Okian or not. Jikuin learns that the model sprained his arm recently. From an injury, Ryujin is way more willing to meet him and extends a hand. The celebrity is initially shocked to find the same guy. From the news up here, in front of his eyes, they shake hands properly, while Jikon suggests they sit somewhere comfortable. But that's not the important part. The important part is that our boy is practically crushing Yanwu's hand with his insanely strong grip. But to his utter shock, this guy isn't even leaking a trace of chi from his body, appearing like an ordinary human. Disappointed, Ryojim apologizes for his intrusion. Jikin tells the two to get comfortable, while he goes away to tend to the bathroom. Though he's going away as an excuse, he's already set his men on standby. In case some shit goes down, the room is cleared until only 2 of the men remain, sharing a table across from each other. Though he's enjoying his tea, Ryojim is severely depressed, realizing that this guy only resembles Okian's facial features. In the end, it seems like he's alone in this world, until Yenwu announces Ryujium's name, getting up close to whisper his shock of seeing him alive. To Yenwu's surprise, the bodyguard who he presumed to be dead turned out to be alive. Ryugum is so ready to throw hands at this point that he unleashes a violent aura to warn Yanwu, questioning if this was all a game to the bastard. In the end, Yanwu is just a false identity for the man underneath. It's always been Okian, which leads to only one explanation, and it's that Okian must have obtained some kind of skill, allowing him to mask his Kai levels in the open. Ryujum's concerned just how early this guy returned to the future before him. Okian tells him right away that killing him here would be meaningless, so he shouldn't release his murderous intent. Out in the open, he judges that Ryujium is only just adapting to this world, while Okian is already a part of it and has blended with it. Ryujium asks him direct questions about how he came to the future, but the clever Okian maintains his secrets, getting to his one and only concern. Ryugame questions the one person he truly cares about. He wants to know if the girl he was assigned to guard also came to the future like them. But Okian's in the mood to mess around with our boy's feelings, so he gives him a half-assed answer, like it's supposed to be a riddle. Done with his bullshit, our boy literally exerts so much pressure against the table that it knocks Okian in his seat all the way back into the world. From the looks of it, Okian's unwilling to cooperate. So, Ryugame has decided he'll find his answers on his own. He stares down at Okian, who is emerging from the rubble, reminiscing and questioning if this was the reality they once shared another life in. However, Okian's grown really confident from that last attack from his opponent. It's as if he can sense that Ryujum hasn't yet fully regained his strength before their little dance begins. Okian stops him to alert Ryujum about the special barrier of illusion that he's placed in with this in place. The rest of the world won't see them recklessly fighting each other, and instead, it will appear as if they were catching up. Like old friends, it's funny, but bro really cares about his reputation. To keep that up, even as a villain, Okian dashes right in. But our boy immediately points out something shocking. He wasn't facing Okian at all. Ryujin crushes a pine cone in his hand and states that he's going to find out the truth for himself. He remarks that, despite having hidden his ki in his normal state, this guy actually leaked some of his ki while defending himself, which revealed to Ryuyon that he wasn't Okian at all. The woman harboring the disguise of Yenwu suddenly reverts back to her original state, clearly impressed that he was able to piece together the truth. With one encounter, do you guys recall Yanoni, the chick that was nearly responsible for making our boy in the president's life earlier? Yeah. Meet Itachi's sister over here. The perspective goes back to the final day of the rebellion, where he clearly recalls Unhai falling to her death. After being sliced open, he was confident that it was all over for her. So this is just strange. Unhai laughs at his confusion and reveals that the real Okian is actually quite an important figure in this world. She was taking on his identity as Yenwu because her boss is busy managing other meetings for his plans. And in today's report, she's more than happy to tell Okian of Rojium's return, also gauging his powers from earlier. She thinks she can easily beat Ryojium here, which is why Itachi's sister goes for a shadow clone jutsu to gang up on our boy, but she forgot who she was dealing with, because he easily takes down one of the clones. With ease, he's done hearing her run her mouth. Bro basically told her to shut the fudge up. Of course, since Ryujin has been expelling so much ki from his body, having only recently awakened, it's going to take a toll on him. And that assumption alone became Unhai's greatest failure, because our boy reminded her that he was built differently. With a single attack, he took care of all of her clones. She was on the ground, helpless to face him. Ryujum clearly remember slaying the psycho thought. That day she fell off a cliff with an injury that shouldn't be easy to heal. Unhai reveals that she too believed that she would die that same day. But upon opening her eyes, reality became different for her. She was in the future, looking clueless in front of man, wearing a nice suit with ashy hair. He was Okian, and he was already helping her adjust in this new world. This means that Okian was the first to wake up among them, and since he is her superior, Unhai doesn't want to give up until the end. She nearly catches Ryujium's eye with her sharp stab, but our boy counters her just in time, pushing her away with a heavy blow. Unhai is practically unable to continue the fight, while Ryujium walks to her, reminding her of how pitiful she looks. When she says that Okian actually saved her life. Unhai had only been here for a month, but that's not what Ryujium is concerned about. He wants to know when her body initiated the process of decaying. She doesn't know where he's going with this. So he ripped her shirt off, revealing rotted flesh underneath. Ryujium adds that Okian never actually saved her at all. He merely used a spell to keep her alive for a while, until she eventually meets her doom. After being no longer of use, Unhai goes batshit crazy in response, roaring at him for saying such ridiculous things. Ryujin understands that. She's never heard of this technique, but in his eyes the verdict is clear. She's just a tool in Alkion's plans. Also, he entertains her by thinking about why he's making her do all of this. Trivial work, it's because her worth isn't beyond that. In Alkion's eyes, yeah. This is ending up a nightmare for Unhai, who is traumatized, to realize she's going to be 6 feet under the ground. Soon, however, there's a way out, a way that Ryujium only knows. He will have to inject a chi that is different from a chi that is spoiling her body, and he shows her how it's done, by infusing some of his own chi. To revert the infection, this is confirmed to Unhai, that her master was planning to kill her off quietly. Ryujin concludes that either he or Okian can use the infusion technique. So, she's going to have to make a choice to take a side, realizing that it's come to this. Unhai remarks that she wants to live, and asks for an order from Ryujium. Okay. I definitely thought she would end up dead, like how it goes from most stories. But this is a really nice change. Ryujium reveals that her objective is to act like a double agent. From now on in the next scene, Yinwu comes crashing out of the door, begging to be saved from the Ryujium. He alerts the president and urges that they leave immediately. Much to their confusion, the president is frightened at the notice of a dangerous person inside the room and wonders what the hell just happened. Going inside, they discover Ryujium, who has completely trashed the entire place. He apologizes for making a mess and offers compensation in whatever way he can. His excuse is that he was testing things out. The president isn't worried about that immediately, and instead asks if Ryujium is doing okay in his mental state. As for Yin Wu, they're concerned about him too, wondering if he got hurt somewhere. In fact, Unhai is kind of pissed to find our boy appearing so unstable like that, especially when it's unusual for him to be this way. Bro's acting skills can get him an Oscar apparently. Anyway, he wants to have a real conversation with Unhai soon, discussing their goals regarding Okian. The perspective shifts back to the past, where the young swordsman was told of his one and only duty: he was supposed to draw his weapon to protect the important people around him. Bodyguards were meant to protect them with their lives, and he was often reminded that his life didn't matter nearly as much as the person he was assigned to protect. At the same time, since bodyguards lived to protect someone else, they were unusually strong-willed and undetermined to die. Ryujin wakes up in the lab, where the researchers are on red alert, finding his condition suddenly appearing more unstable than ever before. He tells him he's okay, but he wants to know how long the research will go on for. The president tells him to take it easy, as they can always continue another time. You know, the president is really starting to grow on me, because he's giving our boy the respect he deserves, instead of treating him like a slave. Ryujium prefers continuing the research another time, because he got to uphold an important promise to someone. Right in the next scene, the model like Unhai sees Ryujium, stating that he arrived later than she anticipated. She can tell that someone is following him, but it's okay, since it's only one of the president's watchmen. They decide to discuss their plans over food, but Anhai is a bit shocked that he's so comfortable ordering so many drinks. At her expense, Bro tells her to keep quiet, because he's the one supposed to carry out the questioning here. And then he starts off by covering OK Yun's backstory, who basically outsmarted him in their final encounter. Okian is a member of the family that he was assigned to protect. It was long believed that Okian met his death in an incident, but no one could have assumed that he faked his death in order to plan a rebellion. Anhai shares that he's a man of many secrets, while she just followed his orders without question. Since she can't answer that question well, Ryujium asks if there's anyone else from the past that came to the future to her knowledge. Anhai, OK Yun, and Ryujium are the only ones. Out of her own curiosity, she went neck deep into finding records of anyone else, but ended up finding nothing. Ryujium learns that Okin is actually overseas at the moment, while Anhai is a bit put off that he's about to go meet him. In the condition he's in, the fact of the matter is, Okian has grown considerably stronger from the past. Our boy appears uninterested in her yapping and stops her butt. It's actually because he sees something that makes his eyes widen. In extreme shock, the real Yanwu, or should I say the real Okian, is coincidentally staring at the two of them from outside the restaurant. A smile forms on his face, with Okian realizing that the world has gotten more interesting. From this revelation, Ryujium gets up, calling their meeting fruitless and pathetic. He wants to add more conditions to her role, now that he's seen the guy in person. Something important reawakened inside Ryujin. He had been so blinded by his feelings of exacting revenge that he completely brushed away the one thing that mattered to him the most. Ryujin tells her that he strongly believes in the girl's survival, the one he was assigned to protect. Even though this is quite a ridiculous statement, from Anhai's point of view, who already looked for documents, Ryujium's master's words ring loud and clear. Inside his mind, his one and only duty is to protect the one that was assigned to him. And following that iron rule, he's going to locate his lady first. Anhai reminds him that it won't be easy to look for her, as she doesn't even recall her face. But our boy is either a simp or a goddamn machine, with the way he picks up a pencil and starts sketching her face out, to its finest details, having served her for life. This should be easy for him, until this fucking goofball reveals the drawing. And plot twist, this shit isn't Picasso's work at all. The scene cuts to Choi Soo-yeon. Her friend is a bit annoyed that she left without her. Also, she's the same girl from the beginning of the story, who wanted to end her life. Aside from that, Sun's background is that she's basically a hit in her school, a model with a fan club full of weirdos and nerds, shooting out of their league, thinking they're going to hit it like LeBron. And because of those showerless creeps, Sun's friend is a bit worried about her. Her friend is at the same time jealous of Sun's massive attention spark in her school. While they're casually talking, Ryujiong and Anhai locate the two young girls. From a distance, Anhai is actually pretty stumped by the smartphone technology, remarking how it's an incredible sea of information. What a great time to be alive. Back to the story, Ryujium is really glad. They're making solid progress here, having initially assumed it would have taken him up to a year. To get to this point, he tells Anhai to be quiet, because they're here to observe her. When suddenly, a bunch of creeps gang up on the two young girls. These PDF files, looking like skin crawlers over here, are trying to get Sun's attention, even demanding a hug from her out of their obsession. But with the way they're approaching the two girls, Sun's face is struck with horror, as the two ugly scumbags act like she owes them a favor for being her fans. Ryujin and Anhai are watching from a distance, realizing they should intervene soon. And now for a lore drop on his lady. Dandelion is the first word that comes to his mind when describing her innocence. A petite and innocent girl who wept relentlessly, despite belonging from a rich family. Every time she gets sick, her condition is beyond comparison. She was the definition of someone who needed to rely on someone else. For a safe existence, Rugium leaps in. Right as ugly King Kong over here is trying to hug Sun, Unhai bats an eye on the Sun's friend. And in case you guys were somehow thinking that Sun was Rugium's lady, you are wrong, it's her friend. And she wasn't weak, not in her past life. And not even now, she was his master. Rugium walks up to her, and she slowly approaches him. Our boy apologizes for being so late to save her, and even offers her his own jacket to protect against the cold. With this meeting alone, Ruijim is dead confident in the person in front of him. But to his utter shock, the chick bolts right in, stinging him with a powerful uppercut in the abdomen. Ruijim clearly wasn't expecting that, and neither was I. This chick's not a damsel in distress. She's a weapon with a smile on her face. She shares that it's been a while since they last met each other. Turns out the chick mistook him for being a fan of hers. My dude is devastated, realizing that she doesn't even remember him at all. She doesn't even share the same name as her. The girl doesn't get what's the issue, and asks if he's Soon's fan instead. Ruijim appears visibly distraught, realizing that it's not just a matter of memories, but a matter of her demeanor as well. He was speaking to an entirely different person now. The kid lowers her head in embarrassment, realizing that she punched him for no reason. Some dude from class come out of nowhere to protect Cyan and her friend, thinking that our boy was trying to harass them or something, but at this moment, Ryujium doesn't care about anything at all. All he knows is the grim reality that this child is different from his master. They leave him be and go away with Cyan. But the girl appears in a pensive state, seeing the man stand on his own with a sorrowful expression. From this one interaction, she can tell that he's someone who has lived a terrible life. In the next scene or the next morning, Ryujium and his trusty sidekick, Onai, arrive at the tomb where his lady is supposedly buried. Onai finds it a bit unremarkable, but thinks it's due to the passage of time. They confirm the information by meeting with the top historian under the president's command. Having confirmed it from multiple sources, they discover that Ryujium's lady passed on the day of the rebellion. Her final belongings are kept sacred in the tomb. Unhai appears okay, but Ryujium is extremely distraught. So much so that he punches the ground to vent his frustration. The final scene replays in his mind over and over again. Okian inevitably bested him by separating the bodyguard from his one and only goal. Unfortunately, he broke the rules of his job and failed his ultimate purpose in life. In front of her tomb, he finds himself despairing at the thought of failing her expectations. I genuinely feel bad for him. It's like doing something with such devotion for decades of your life and realizing your efforts didn't matter at all. Now that they confirmed her death, they turned their attention to the child from before, the one who shared a similar face to his master. Back to the scene of the school. The girl finds herself surprised that she's the only employee left. Her drunkard boss is lazing around. Bro looks like an even more depressed version of Nanami. Shidiak is such a lazy jackass that he wants her to make him a bowl of ramyeon as part of her job, while the girl is pissed that he's making her do such insulting tasks when she's supposed to go big and famous one day. Shidiak finds her annoying enough to get up and cook for himself. The girl's interview is playing on TV, while Shidok tells her to be more patient for a little while longer. Shidok receives a sudden phone call, only to find himself excited. Ending the call, he shares the good news with Min Dae-yeol, telling her that he's finally secured a drama meeting with an amazing production company. Duel's eyes lit up with happiness, realizing that she's about to approach the opportunity of a lifetime here. Since they're invited for the meeting, Dool decides to go, but she's put off by the meeting location, as it's unsuited for a young girl like her. However, she chalks it off as just a company issue. The interviewees call her over, requesting the girl. Much to her shock, she reminds them that she's a minor, so that won't be possible. The atmosphere of the place does not feel like an interview at all. It is unprofessional, and these two drunkards are acting like nutcases. They tell her to get comfortable, as this is just an introductory meeting, rather than an official one. At first she thinks it's fine, but the moment one of the creepy bastards messes with her body, she realizes. This is the last. A horrifying realization sets in for the young girl, who realizes what kind of direction this is going. She takes control of the situation and gets up, stating that she isn't about that kind of life, even for a price of a building. But that didn't matter anymore, as only moments afterwards, as a victim to the drug that was mixed in the water, with her body immobilized on the ground. She realizes they fooled her by spiking the water too. As for Shydok, he's been so depressed that he became desperate. They think he's probably smiling, reading the script right now. With the girl knocked out, one of the guys suggests that they take advantage of the girl's dreams to help better their own goals. Receiving a phone call from their leader, they report that they're making smooth progress so far. Back at President Jikin's place, our boy looks at the clear moon, remarking that he's only got one thing left in his life, and that is vengeance. He fully intends to destroy everything Okian has built up in his life, tearing it all down, until he makes sure both of them stay dead. For good this time, Unhai surprises him with her late-night visit, and also we come to learn that he's been supplying her with his chi daily. And I definitely don't mean the birds and the bees that you guys are thinking about. She's come to inform him about some interesting news, though it's not regarding Akion, but the girl who appeared just like his lady. Having sparked an interest in Dula, Unhai began an official investigation, tracing back any links to her. She shockingly reveals that just like Ryujium's lady, this girl also belongs to the Min family, and that means she's a direct descendant of the person he failed to protect. Having tailed her around for a while, Unhai learned that she's currently in a bad situation and needs help even after what she said. Rugum doesn't give a flying fuck about a descendant. He goes back inside, showcasing no interest at all, not in someone who wasn't even his own master. Unhai is a bit annoyed by his reaction, even though she went through the trouble of tracking the girl down meticulously. Upon receiving a sudden phone call, she realizes she must hurry inside. She feels as if Ryugum should simply abandon the girl if he finds her boring, sitting in silence. The depressed man recalls seeing a memory of the one he cherished the most. She gave him many different reactions, until the day of the rebellion came. Sensing that his lady will be threatened, he told her to evacuate safely. But she asked him a final favor, requesting that whenever she looked back at him, he should be there to support her. That visage compared to dual slices inside his mind. Too many thoughts are confusing the young man, who has fully convinced himself that the girl isn't his master. Dual has nothing to do with him, so why should he care also? He thinks that there must be someone out there who is already trying to protect her. Let's go back and visit Nanami again, who has received Beksu as a new hiring recruit to apply for the position of manager. To Beksu's shock, he immediately becomes manager on the first day, without even an interview. After all, this guy doesn't really care about the fact that Beksu is a newbie with that. He bids the guy farewell, recalling that after duel, he's the only employee here. He's got a surprise ready for her, and wonders how the meeting went for her. Receiving a call from his boss, the white-haired dude is pissed as hell. In the few moments he was away to the bathroom, shit went down and the target escaped. His idiot underling tried touching her body and ended up getting his shit rocked for it. And now, since the victim has escaped, they're going to be under heavy suspicion by the police if the matter is reported. However, the bull cut over here thinks that the girl shouldn't have gone far, considering she is still under the effects of drugs, and their suspicions are correct. Duel is barely able to walk, assisting herself against the wall to walk. Unfortunately, she lost her phone back in the room. Otherwise, she could have phoned the police. The poor girl can't even perceive the hallway, while the men quickly chase after her to catch her, begging for her legs to move. She keeps on going, knowing that it's her only chance to get out alive. The moment her hand reaches the door handle, she is flung to the back as the men catch up to her. Bullcut over here wants to hurt her, but she's already looking depressed. They're a bit shocked by her insane mental fortitude for having endured for this long. No longer caring about what happened, they decide to take her back. Suddenly the ground starts shaking. Bull Cut can clearly sense it, until the entire building begins to shake. Realizing that it's a strong earthquake, the girl senses an opportunity. The lights are out and they can't see anything. To her surprise, the door is also open, because our boy has already made his way inside. Back at the president's residence, he received a note from on high. Still not knowing why, he made the effort of coming all the way here to save the girl's life. In reality, he could have always ignored her, so he doesn't know why he's here. Without complicating the answer too much, Ryo Gom accepts that he wanted to do a good deed. The menacing man demands them to let go of the girl. Immediately terrified, the white-haired dude finds himself in shock, not knowing where this guy came from. Also, the ground is still shaking underneath them, as Ryujin casually flings his body away, knocking it into multiple surfaces before it flops to the ground. Next up is Bull Cut's turn, who is probably about to piss his pants in shock. Ryujin, with a threatening glare, demands that he let go. And unknown to himself, he just doesn't understand why he feels so angry. Bull Cut runs the heck away. After seeing another human get treated like a damn training dummy, he's so afraid that he runs all the way to his car and tries driving away, only to get stopped by Ryujin, who adds that he never told the scumbag to leave. Bull Cut drags himself out of the car, while Ryujin questions what they did to the girl to make her unconscious. So he wonders if he's not getting any answers, asking one final time. As he shoves the car away with sheer aura, he questions if they poisoned her, and if so, Ragum wants an immediate antidote. Bull Cut tries to explain that the girl is simply drugged and will wake up soon, but this man isn't looking for cheap answers. As he makes a sandwich out of the dude's hand, Ryujin gives him a bone-chilling warning, threatening to break his neck if he finds out that he's lying. Bull Cut doesn't even know what's going on, as numerous men suited up like government agents come to defuse the situation. Turns out it's a security team, and they tell the kid to run away. Ryujin tends to the girl's condition, but the emergency team's leader has a different plan in mind and wants to assume custody over the child. They don't even introduce themselves to Ryujin and simply order him to hand over the girl, or else they'll use force. But our boy is ready to throw hands, imploring them to go ahead and ducking. Try recalling their first interaction and how he helped her just now. Ryuga believes that he should be the one to take responsibility. Over her, he tells them that he's the child's manager, even if only for a day. The Bull Cut kid is talking to his boss and learns that to take control of the situation in an emergency. But when the kid reports that they weren't expecting to run into Duel's manager, his boss is surprised, focusing on Ryujin and the bodyguards. They demand immediate verification to prove his connection to the child, countering their demand for authentication. Ryujin asks the security members to prove a way of trust for him to hand over. Duel's safely internalizing his thoughts. He doesn't trust these guys at all, believing that they have suspicious intentions. One of the security dudes tries to attack him, but Bro eats a kick in the gut and then gets pushed off with a palm strike, with his body on the ground. Ryo Game wonders if he went too far. The leader of the team is done acting nicely and signals his team to jump our boy. But this isn't about to be Jujutsu Kaisen, because Ryugam casually beats the ever-living crap out of them with a variety of different strikes, until he's the victor. As he's going away from the remaining team, Ryugam senses a feeling that he wasn't ready for. The leader of the security team steps in to take the fight, and finally the girl wakes up at last. She has no memory of the security team members, so he tells her to close her eyes for a second and charges up a powerful attack. Within a flash of a second, the team is flipped over to its head, as they're all knocked out like bowling pins. With Ryujin's explosive lunge, the girl is too stunned to speak. Her only reaction is the factual admission that he's an unbelievably strong human. In the next scene, she's safely returned to her boss, who comes to realize that he made a major mistake by sending the girl alone, without anyone to care for. He didn't know this would happen, and was fooled by the company, just because it shared a big name. Even though she appears to be fine, it's clear that this situation has clearly affected the girl. Though he assumed it was a good opportunity at first, it could have ended really badly for Dooley. Pissed as hell, her boss is in the mood to kill the crap out of the ones who hurt his employee. But his very own employee points out his ridiculous approach. He couldn't just fight against a giant company. And though she wants to expose the bastards for what they did, it's simply unrealistic, as they're weak in this circumstance. No matter how much they raise their voice, they would lose. That's why she didn't want her boss to go on and start a meaningless fight instead. She's more than happy to pay them back later, in the long run instead. She thinks it's more important to thank a certain someone for helping them out, dragging his ass out to the disinterested Ryujium. She lets the boss take the conversation, though he wants to compensate. Our boy Ryujium really doesn't care about anything other than sweet drinks. The girl has become an immediate fan of this guy for being really good at fighting. She thinks assigning him for the manager's position will be excellent, especially since they've run into each other before. She wonders if the girl he mistook her for is also as pretty as her apart from that. The boss is out here interviewing the man and learns that he's practically jobless right now, while Dooley is shocked by what he's doing, because in the boss's point of view, both of them look perfect together. So he straight up offers him a job to work as the manager. And well, back in class, Dooley gets praise from Siwon for having boarded a big production company, not knowing the kind of shit show that went down. The other night, Dool speaks about the details and explains that it didn't work out. Feeling dizzy, she draws away and nervously asks for a favor to give her some trade secrets. This kind of private request has soon a bit on the fence, but thanks to her overly nice, she accepts wholeheartedly. She's ready to answer any questions when a group of delinquent bitches comes around, pushing them out of the way. This is the Ojanel gang, but thanks to Siwon's personal managers, they're scared off from engaging in anything serious. Siwon believes that getting a manager is crucial. For situations like these, choosing someone reliable is more important than choosing someone strong, as that person should be dependable. The word dependable reminds her of the man she recently became acquainted with. Ryugum is observing the cityscape at night. When Unhai arrives to serve him, Bro is a bit too harsh on her, because he points her out for being late every time. Also, since he wonders what kind of personal schedule she has, Unhai refuses to talk about that and questions why he called her. Bro just wants to know about the celebrity manager. Roll something not even this chick knows. Receiving a sharp glare from him, she explains that a typical role of a manager involves checking on the celebrity's condition and taking care of negotiations in their stead. Basically a caretaker who always looks after them. Now that she's spilled the beans, she wants to know why he asked. Ryugum explains that he's got himself a new job as the manager of Mindyul, which comes as a roaring shock to her, especially when this dude was hard on rejecting her. The other day, she even curses him for having a change of heart and suspects that this would happen in the end. Apart from that, he got to know about something interesting from the girl back to the emergency team. He reports to his leader about the unordinary man and how he became responsible for mission failure. Meanwhile, Ryujin reveals to Unhai how he fought a bunch of guys, trying to save her life, but from one glance, he could tell that these guys were different. He struck them with chi, and they were still capable of getting back on their feet. Back to the scene of their naked ass. Boss Bro chucks a fist so hard that it sends the team's leader into the wall, reminding them that they're also unordinary humans. The fact that they failed this mission is the height of embarrassment. They can't afford to slip up on this mission, with how important it is. Ryujium tells Unhai that the people of this world shouldn't be used to the concept of chi. This was the present world, a world without any concept of martial arts chi. But he could feel it from those men. Also the emergency team, as boss is now personally curious and wants to meet this mystery man himself. Unhai's reaction is a wild one. After hearing that from him, she wants to know if he's telling the truth or not, while Ryujin doesn't get why she's so upset about this. He wonders if there's something she knows, but he doesn't. Unhai's eyes widened in horror, recalling how Okian told her that internal chi no longer existed. So this means it's impossible. But this only adds even more proof of Okian, using her like a tool. Remembering her meeting with the Okian of the present, she learned that the world changed considerably. Over the 8 centuries they weren't around, the average human body lost one of its core functions. This had now become a world where, instead of martial arts, development and technology were advanced. He even admired the power of science, as having lived for only a brief period. He understood that chi was no longer required in such a world. But then that adds on to the mystery of why Unhai was kept alive for so long. Ryujin goes on to add that he didn't experience simple chi, so his observation is a bit short-sighted at the moment. That's why he wants to investigate those guys first. Bro literally drops off a building in front of her, makes a superhero landing, and Jojo walks his way to uncover the truth in the shadows that is being kept away from him. The following day, we get to see Korea's top school, which is lined with the most exotic cars around. The Young Jean High School is one where the government is personally investing in, and it resembles a university with the various courses and activities it offers. And it just so happens that Dooley attends this school. The school is stuck UPS and trust fund babies, like the 3 delinquent girls. Unfortunately, unlike the rest of the students, she was someone who merely got in because of luck. She gets bullied for merely existing, and because of her background, they treat her like crap, even trying to pin Soon against an eyesore like her. DOL snaps back at Sojong, and, though she wanted to hit the girl with all her might, she only got even more harassed and provoked by the boys in her class. The entire class is hostile toward her, but she can't do anything to prevent her fate. Apart from that, the students are curious about the transfer student, who's going to be joining them today. The teacher comes around and tells them to take their seats. The kids are fully expecting a new girl, knowing their teacher's high standards. But to everyone's astonishment, most importantly Julie, it's our boy Chok Ryujin looking dapper in that uniform. Let's go a few steps back and see his meeting with the president. He made a request to join the school and reasoned that his curiosity about this world makes him want to pursue a path of knowledge. The president then goes on to appoint the director of the National Intelligence Service to take care of this request on his behalf. So long as his age wasn't an issue, he could join, and guess what? Our boy's now a part of class, and he's got all the girls simping for him. Even the boys are admiring his good looks, believing that he's a future star or an actor. Janel puts them aside and introduces himself, and compliments the guy's physique, returning a bone-chilling response. Ryujin shares that he gets the gains by taking the heads, or in other words, slashing people. The funniest thing is that the geeky nerd, who told him about Yinwu many days ago, is also a part of this class, and that kid is practically shivering here. Janel for acting like some kind of anime character. The wimpy kid is out here quivering, though, afraid that this guy might go hyper and destroy the whole school. Rugum finally glances at him and also sees delay. So he goes there and gets a hearing from the girl for attending the school. She can't believe he easily made his way in and wants to know more about his identity. However, before coming to this school, Ryojin was strictly prohibited from revealing his identity. My boy was media trained for situations like these before entering the school, so he shares the answer he was told to give, stating that he joined through a special admission. At the same time, he's her manager, which is a similar job to bodyguard, knowing that those dangerous men are gunning for her. He wants to be near her and protect the celebrity. However, she's a bit put off and reminds him not to do that kind of stuff during school, as both of them will get in trouble for it. She thinks it's better to act like total strangers in the school, and she shies away from reality because she wasn't really a celebrity just yet. The chick is out here getting swooned. But her man is like Batman and vanishes in an instant. Let's cut to a different scene, where one of the nerdy kids is getting bullied for his lunch money. You know, the typical bully situation. Anyway, this kid is relentless and doesn't want to hand over the money. So he eats a really painful hook in the gut for disobeying orders, knocking the daylights out of him. Jin'il's tyrannical control over his class causes the rest of them to shiver in fear. Walking his way here, our boy wonders what's going on. The reason he disappeared in an instant was because he felt a trace of chi coming from nearby. Janel's got the kid on his knees, collecting the money. The wimpy kid explains that Janel has a policy of collecting taxes from everyone. He treats this as his playground and is allowed to do whatever the fuck he wants because he's got a strong family background. The easiest way to describe him would be king. And as you can guess, the word king is quite the trigger for our boy, who is genuinely disgusted at the pathetic weakling of a sight that Janelle is, despite being the king. But his bold words just now were heard by Jin'il and the rest of his goons. Of course, Region, being the polite gentleman that he is, apologized for upsetting the king. Jin'il thinks he's threatening to rise up in the hierarchy in the class ladder. His goon thinks he's more than enough to handle a guy like Ryujin. But Janel is personally pissed and straight up pushes the guy away, showing his jaw, asking for a clean hit on the fist. Yeah, famous last words right here. Ryujin sincerely asks if he's ready to die, which may seem like an exaggeration to others. But this guy really means it, pissed that he's still showing off. Janel prepares a punch to hit our boy. The wimpy kid can't believe that they're going at it, already on the first day of his transfer. Suddenly the teacher comes chiming and ruining Jin'il's fun as he was about to start a fight. He's told to keep these matters outside of school. Jin'il reminds Ryojin that he's going to make his life miserable from now on, which is such an empty threat, coming from a coward like him. Bro is out here acting like he's going to destroy Ryojin. Meanwhile, our boy is looking at him in confusion. That day during lunch break, Ryojin requests to sit with a group of students. But to his surprise, they all leave the table out of fear. Probably because they don't want to be associated with him. Out of fear of Janel, since no one wants to sit with him. The wimpy kid requests to share the table instead. So they talk and eat a meal together. Our boy is a bit surprised why everyone's afraid of him. The wimpy kid reveals that he's basically marked from now on by Janel and his goons, which means his school life is about to be hard as hell. This guy tortures people until they're forced to leave school, and that's the reason they're all ignoring him. However, the kid also doesn't know why Ryujin didn't beat the daylights out of Janel, knowing that he could have. Also, he wants to make something clear about the first time they met. He could already tell that the dude was strange. So he amusingly asks if our boy is some kind of superhuman from a different time, which is scary, at how accurate the kid's prediction is anyway. The teacher roars at the new transfer student, intending to share conversation with him. They go to a separate room with the teacher, asking him trivial questions about the school experience. Ryujin responds that he doesn't find the teachers helpful or to his liking, since they don't exactly uphold high morals, like they used to, of course. Our boy knows exactly what's going on here, and why the teacher brought him here. So he tells Unhai to drop the act. Our favorite baddie returns to her normal face, and becomes shocked to learn about traces of chi from a school. Unfortunately, neither of them can conclude who the chi belongs to. That's why our boy intentionally tried to cause a scene, attempting to force someone to use chi. In that situation, it was a good opportunity. That was ruined because of the teacher. But apart from that, he's confirmed one other thing, and it's that martial chi still exists in this world. Also, Janelle is currently beating the wimpy kid, which is only going to make it all the more satisfying. When our boy beats him black and blue, the kid is told to strip his shirt and strike him back. The kid hits softly across his shoulder, looking traumatized as ever. Janelle points out Juno's terrified face and delivers a crushing swipe. Rocking his body, the goons are watching their leader, fiddle around with his new pet. Also, they recall seeing Ruigium at the cafeteria, speaking to Juno, which is why he's being punished for it. With the rate it's going, Juno's destined to take off his pants. But then, the glasses boy from before swoops in to stop him. He's the class president, and he's decided to take action after sharing a meeting with Duel, who was disappointed in him for taking a knee to the bullies. That meeting returned some of his resolve. The only reason the class president stayed silent, up until now, was because he wanted to maintain a peaceful life for his future, but now he's done staying silent. Bro literally goes Superman against Janel and is about to destroy him when Ragium appears out of nowhere to block the attack with this. He's confirmed something Ragium, then goes on to verbally murder Janel's existence by saying that he's not a king, but a bastard with the way he's handling things. This provocation causes Janel's men to sweep in and attack the transfer student. Recalling his meeting with the president, he was strictly told not to cause any trouble. That was his promise, and that's why he doesn't do anything except stand in one place. Recalling his conversation from Juno, he asked the kid why he associated himself with a troublemaker who was marked. The kid responded with a timeless proverb, that the strong always protect the weak. He always viewed Ryugium as a strong person physically, but in a way the transfer student was weak. When it came to adapting to the school okay, the really beautiful part about this sequence is how even the weak-looking kid is situationally strong from the perspective of the school, and he's helping Ryujin, who is having difficulty adapting. I love the way the author handled that. Let's go back to the fight. Janel's underling ended up hurting his own hand after trying to hit our boy, and then he kissed the floor as our boy flipped him over. Ryujin reflects that his original old self is also weak in some ways. The kids are shocked, seeing this dude knock out two guys in an instant, turning his attention to the cowardly Janiel. He questions if the king is ready to put on his best performance. Tension building up in his body. The psychopath Janiel goes batshit crazy as he swoops in for his punch. The funny thing is, that stupid performance didn't matter, because all Ryogium did in response was use a forehead flick to send this dude flying into the next world. Bro is so bored, he doesn't even look at him while doing that, and calls Janel pathetic on top of that. A verbal and a physical beatdown in one. Janel's forehead has birthed an egg as he rests defeated on the ground. Ryujin is bored and thinks that Janel is clearly unworthy of the title of king. Instead, the class president is more of a worthy contender. Recalling the punch he stopped earlier, Ryujin understands that this guy is trying to restrain his powers to an unfathomable level. Park Minguk is the target they were looking for, the one leaking traces of martial chi, lashing out strongly against the new transfer student. Minguk questions what he's hiding. Neither of the students can interpret their conversations, but from the looks of it, Ryogium has caused trouble. Seeing the mess, Duel arrives to see Janiel and his goons. Down for the count, she doesn't know what's going on, and sees the class president having a chat with him. Our boy looks around to meet her gaze, and merely walks past in the next scene after class. SIU and Dula discuss how fascinating it is for a guy like him to attend this school, but they're happy that with a guy like him around, their safety is guaranteed. Janel now looks like a chump, but this dude is still not done, and wants to take control of his world again. Zian remarks that in some way, Ruigium appears different. It's as if he's got this natural pull of safety, compelling a person to come near. Turns out this chick has the hots for him, and wants to get closer to him, not knowing that Ruigium's actually her manager. Well, since she doesn't have a choice in this situation, our girl confesses the truth, which rocks Soon's world, and she promises to keep her secret. Dula is glad that she told her this information early on. Also, it's clear that her new manager doesn't have any work experience, and neither does the aspiring celebrity. So it's a match made in heaven. Son admits that at least Ryugium looks more reliable than any manager she has on her side. As for our boy, he's recalling the discussion he shared with the class president. Minguk refused to answer any questions until our boy brought up Qigong. Minguk didn't know what he was talking about at all. This confirmed one thing, and it was that not even Minguk knew about his strength. He was basically swinging a fist like normal, not knowing he had so much power behind him. Minguk began getting tensed up from the strange accusations, and that's how their conversation cut off. Ryujin vividly recalls his energy from the punch, appearing familiar to him in some ways. Anyway, Ryujin is getting disciplined for causing so much trouble on his first day. They want to call over his guardian and put him in trouble for it. In response, the fearless student simply calls the instructor a shameful man, and right away, the so-called guardians step foot inside the school, which are revealed to be the director of the National Intelligence Service. And his men imagine having the damn director as your representative for the school meeting. Bro must be feeling unstoppable. Anyway, since the school is sponsored by the government, they're pretty disappointed with the way they've handled things here. He also tells Ryojium to leave the rest to him, which only sparks the instructor's curiosity even more. And with that, the issue is resolved. In the next scene, we get to see our favorite baddie again. She brought Rugum what he asked for. It's a file of all the records on Minguk, including his every information. From her particular findings, she noticed that he's an ordinary kid. If anything, Minguk simply has a strong passion for school. Or so it appears also. The Qigong couldn't have been inherited from his family members, either, since the kid doesn't even have parents. Only an older brother. The investigation is tougher than he thought it would be. So he wonders if the class president shares a connection to the security team members. This also confirms the extinction of Qigong in this era, although not entirely. Though he's tried searching for good evidence, he doesn't get what they're hiding that's so important. Minguk returns home and finds his brother, who asks if something happened during school. But ignoring him completely, the kid keeps on moving forward. Finally, he speaks and tells his brother that he noticed someone at school using a similar power as them, though the guy is a transfer student. He destroyed the school bullies using the same power, and also he has knowledge of their power too, even though Minguk pretended not to know. Minguk's brother asks to describe his appearance, so he vividly chalks down Rujium's physicality, boasting long hair and a tall physique. To Minguk's shock, his brother disappears before his eyes. He goes on to report to his boss that he's found the guy they were looking for, and funnily enough, they've discovered he's a high schooler. The boss found himself initially upset because of what happened and their mission failed, because Minguk's brother wasn't around to make sure they succeeded. So to make sure they don't fail this time around, Section Chief Kim is assigned with an obvious job, a job that he's been meaning to do. Lo and behold, this is Park Dae-han, the same guy who whacked his security team for losing a fight to our boy. Having taken control of the place, Ryu Jium returns all the money that Jinil took from the student as part of the class tax. As for the humiliated so-called king, Janiel is actually wondering if this dude is supported by the president to be acting so fearlessly. Also, it basically means Ryojium is the new school's king. They all talk about how kind he is. Despite his appearance after class, Juno is impressed that with his existence alone, he was able to return the school to a place of sanctity. Kunio is happy to assist him with any inquiries about his school life from now on, but Ryujim sees Mungik just up ahead and expresses that he'll find his answers from him. Instead, Mungik explains the process of sorting and wasting trash. Ryujim thinks it's a needless game, while the class president is questioning the identity of the mysterious transfer student, especially since his brother disappeared in a flash. After that, meeting Minguk suspects that he may be trying to get close to him, but to his shock, Ryujium expresses that he's fine with learning the rest on his own. Also, he makes it sound like they're about to have a fight. Here and now, Minguk is high on alert, and the moment our boy grabs his shoulder, he's about to attack, but then he realizes that it's actually Dullah, who came to catch up with them. She's also pretty suspicious of their secret conversations lately. Anyway, they explain how Minguk was teaching how to sort stuff. Dula points out that it's funny how all three of them are special admission students. She thinks it's a good idea for the two of them to befriend each other, since they don't have anyone else to rely on. The scene cuts to Ryu Geometry and Eula sharing a chat with the company's boss. They were called on sudden notice to reveal a shocking opportunity. Bro looks at them with the face of utter dread, like he's about to die, and explains that they've been tasked with work. A junior that he knows is making her own web drama, and because it requires a student role, it fits Duel perfectly. Unfortunately, the place is a bit far from here, so her manager is going to have to drive. But of course our boy doesn't know how. So he's handed the keys, but he's got no idea how it works. The clueless Ryujin actually thinks they're going to ride the key, which is pretty fucking hilarious to me. She tells her boss that he's an unordinary guy in their school, and that seems to be a bad thing, apparently, because they haven't signed a proper contract to get him for the role of manager. Duel recommends they depart right away, so their boss allows them access to his card, allowing them to take care of their expenses. But this girl, Duel, is out here having the time of her life, ignoring her boss's warning of spending little. She reminds Rugium that he can't exactly say shit to her. After eating 5 breads on his own, switching topics, he points out that she's close with Minguk, which is true, because they're both special admission students who knew each other from first grade. Special admission is supposed to be a term for students who struggled financially. To get in, though, it's a privilege to enter the school. It promised them a life of hell. The class president is a resilient man, however, and he's influenced by his brother, who works in security, but Dooley's a bit upset that he's asking about the other guy, and not her. Rujum turns his face, acting like he's asleep when in reality, he's deeply focusing on the word security. Arriving at the site of the production, Ryu Gaiam learns that Julia doesn't really want him to follow her around because it will attract way too much attention. Instead, she tells him to go and rest in the bus of the filming crew, and that's what he does, sitting patiently, gathering his thoughts on the security people. He fought back then, which means Minguk definitely lied to him, and his brother Daehan is a suspicious figure too. And well, guess what happens? The same group of suits, wearing clowns, turn up to meet him on the bus. Our boy is happy that he's going to get a chance to encounter Dahan today. Rugum expresses that he's not going to destroy them if they simply answer some of his questions, starting with the first one, which is him asking about their main target. Since they're quiet on that, he asks a second question, inquiring about the man known as Park Dahan, the one in charge of the team. Leaps right in to beat Ryujin, though he unloads a punch. His fist is casually grabbed, without our boy even needing to stand up. The guy just blocked the attack with ease. But that's exactly what his opponent was waiting for, as he exerts insane amounts of chi and unleashing a high-level attack in a cramped space. Even his underlings think that this will kill Ryujium, as the security team's leader tries to whip another punch, only to get ragdoll to the side of his face. And seated unconscious Ryujium has equipped himself with a rather useful weapon, believing that it should be a better weapon than his fist. The rest of the guys are out here, taking off their jackets like that's going to do something. The first one rushes to attack, while Ryujium observes that their Qigong shows itself in response to certain triggers. He's out here beating them up, while also collecting his thoughts, comparing them to Minguk's situation. However, compared to the Qigong he experienced in the past era, this one seems like a cheap copy without any merit. That's why he's casually destroying these chumps, without breaking a sweat. And with all of the men defeated, Bro casually sets them on their seats, making it seem like they were sleeping, though he observed them to be weak in their Qigong. The same isn't the case for the guy approaching the bus. Ryujin gets out of the bus to confront the man, wearing a sleek black suit. Dahan is seriously unimpressed that his team was annihilated. In under a minute, Ryujin directly confirms the identity of Park Dahan, And get ready for the plot twist. Our boy himself reveals that he's an ancestor of their family. Hearing the word ancestor coming from his target's mouth, Dahan can't help but let out a loud chuckle. He thinks it's a ridiculous answer, while our boy tells him that he actually knows about his little brother Minguk. That name alone causes Dahan to whip a damn pipe across our boy's head, and only then he asked about Ryu Jin's identity. Luckily, Ryu Jin caught the pipe and wonders if Dahan's really that curious to find that out, since they both have the same goals here. Deciding to continue this fight in another location, they move to an isolated park. Getting comfortable D1 is serious. With how much chi he is releasing right now, he's looking for answers, but those answers will only come if, and only if Ryujin is defeated, since they're both curious. The winner takes all, and the loser will have to oblige. Dahan is done being treated around without respect, and lunges to attack him. The attack connects and pushes Ryujin back considerably. Dahan is rather impressed that his inhuman speed was countered against an enemy like this. So much so that he actually praises Ryujin's capability. But this fight isn't over just yet, as Dahan meticulously uses the walls as a ramp to descend with a powerful aerial kick. Dahan notices that his opponent is reading his movements like a book, so it causes him concern if he's truly up against a force of nature. Though his identity remains a mystery, Dahan is smart enough to deem Ryujin's capabilities perhaps higher than even his own, realizing that he's got no choice but to fully harness the powers of his Qigong. He takes a stance that astonishes our boy. It's the Silent Tiger Fist, and this attack generates immense pressure. Even after being blocked by Ryujin, following up with a second lunge, Dahan blitzes his opponent in his wrathful fury and attempts to land the third strike. Even though Ryujin dodges this attack, the pressure literally destroys a bunch of trees in the park. Going for the fourth sequence of the strike, he tries to overwhelm Ryujin with a definitive final strike, but to Dahan's shock, his opponent is nowhere to be found. The Silent Tiger Fist is actually an attack that requires a mandatory element to complete it, and Ryujin displays that element of complete silence, masking his presence like a quiet predator, ready to annihilate his prey from his blind spot. He criticizes Dahan's inefficient handling of Qigong and shows that he could have ended Dahan in an instant. The first sequence alone from Ryujin is enough to knock Dahan so far back that the earth ruptures in response to the pressure. It was clear that day that their skills were far apart. Ryujin goes on to reveal that he didn't even use the full strike sequence. In the next scene, Dula is surprised that they're getting a private escort vehicle instead of a bus on their way back. The girl has no idea what she missed. The following morning, they're back in the brothers' home anyway, but Minguk doesn't seem to be around. Dahan doesn't even remember getting blacked out, but as an honorable man, he's ready to uphold his promise of stating any desired information. Ryujin explains that he's confirmed a bunch of facts on his own already. The first being that Dahan's body lacks Qigong. Inherently, this made him wonder how a person like him could manifest its powers, until he found a little something in their house. There were a bunch of pills. Their shapes are different from the ones used in the past, but their application is the same. Its purpose is to implant Qigong, which showcases why both of the Park brothers have such powers. Ryujin understands that. Neither of them know about the most important part of the pill. Dahan gets fired up from this new information and demands to hear information in simple words. To put it short and sweet, our boy shocks him by stating that they could both die at this rate. Dahan doesn't want to believe such ridiculous words and starts shouting out of fear and anger. He doesn't understand Ryujin's intentions until the man himself gives him a solid piece of advice. If he truly cherishes his little brother, he must stay away from those corrupt people. Suddenly, both of them feel an immense pressure. Coming from the door, it's a feeling unlike any other, causing Dahan to swell up in fear. The reporters are already waiting in line to interview the world-famous celebrity Yin Wu's arrival. Yin Wu is intrigued to find Eunhye around. She greets him nicely, while he comments on how she looks good. Suddenly the world comes to a stop, as Budget Dio over here and traps them in a barrier. He grabs her by the throat, questioning how the hell she's still alive. Eunhye is in a really tough spot, while Yinwoo orders her to take off her blazer. Eunhye is actually stunned that Yinwoo was able to take notice of her healing condition, even though she already took care of Ryujium's energy. From her body, Yinwoo is looking at her cautiously, while she's wondering how it's possible to see through her with such transparency. Figuring that she's suffered more than enough, he decides to lend her a hand. Instead of increasing the infection, he actually heals her with his own internal energy. Then he tries to gain her trust by stating that he never had any intention of discarding her. Anyway, but he's really surprised by the horrific expression she's got on her face. Yeah, well, that's because she's currently feeling an insane level of pain, grueling inside of her body. As Yinwoo lets out a manipulative smile, the reporters don't even know where. The model disappeared thanks to the barrier he cast, and both of them move out of the scene. In the next scene, we see D1 processing the words that he was left with. His condition was going to lead to his death, which explains the reason he's been feeling the way that he does. He wonders if the organization he's dealing with purposely hid this detail. Daeon is also having double thoughts on whether he should trust Ryujin. Minguk returns from school and is welcomed by his big brother, who is still trying to hold on by doing whatever he can for his little brother's sake. While Minguk's brushing his teeth, he finally tells his brother not to look at his body like a pervert. Dahan, shockingly, tells him that they're not going to use the pills anymore, since the company suspending the drugs and restricting them for organization members only. For now, this news seems terrible to Minguk, who wanted to use their power for an important evaluation. However, Dahan just can't take any more blind chances anymore. All of a sudden, Minguk starts bleeding out from his nose, signaling a horrific fate ahead. As a result of the pills, Dahan is worried and is seriously pissed at him for not taking care of his health. Minguk doesn't understand him today and wonders what's causing him to lose his cool. After all, students tend to get nosebleeds every now and then. The scene cuts to the CK Shields organization's boss, who is having dinner and enjoying a new look at their latest product. This formula is stronger than the last, allowing for a greater result for proper testing. They've got highly skilled personnel around, and yet that skilled personnel was utterly demolished by a dude on life support. This is the power of the Qi Gong pills. And with that, their company value will only take to the skies, with more promise coming from their product. Also, this dude is Cha Ji Yunil, the company's director. Also, Dae-hoon is a part of this meeting, and he's stunned to see the results. The director's body seems to be recovering steadily, and their sales are continuing to see a steady incline. Sellers want more and more of these pills because the transformational effect is instant. With one dose, it's the kind of product that will become popular in the medical field, and they call it the vitamin injection. For now, things are proceeding just as planned. The organization's boss calls for Daehan to catch a rapport of the guy he was sent to target. Poor Daehan only recalls being demolished as the outcome of that fight and goes all quiet. But since he can't say that to save his own life, Daehan expresses that he took care of the guy in private. At least this excuse will buy him some time. The boss tells him to go back to his position. As the scene transitions to his little brother, Minguk's starting to get annoyed, seeing Ryujin tail him around all day. But our boy is pretty clever and chalks it off as a mere coincidence, and nothing more in reality. He's been keeping an eye on Minguk, but lately hasn't noticed any traces of Chi so far. Ryujin's attention is focused outside when he sees Janiel beating the crap out of Juno again. He's punishing the little kid for what Ryujin did to him. Juno's tossed to the ground and reminded of the reality he's always going to be a part of. His goons are staring down their boss, kicking Juno to the ground until Dooley comes along, stopping them shitless, because they thought it was actually Ryujin. Turning to meet her gaze, Janel walks up to her, ready to slap her in the face. And well, that's basically the biggest mistake of his life, because it causes Ryujin to sweep right in and stop him. The dude is so afraid of our boy that he leaves without looking back. Ryujin tells Duel that she was too reckless just now, and he also can't tell why. She's constantly a victim of bad luck and dangerous things. Also, he's finding himself with a shift in priorities. After discovering the pills, more important things take precedence now, so he won't be able to pay attention to her or guard her like he used to. But Ryujin also fears the possibility that something bad might happen in his absence. That's why he misses his old colleagues the most, who he could trust with his life. DOOL warns Juno to be more careful from now on, as Janiel and his underlings will take any opportunity to humiliate him. As they're going away, Ryujin reaches an enlightenment. He could perhaps humiliate Janel forever, rendering him broken beyond repair. And because of that, he tasks Juno to beat up Janel, all on his own, which is basically like saying go and beat Superman. Ryujin stands firm on his ground and believes that this is the right way. And since he doesn't have colleagues in this era, he's willing to share his power with the person he trusts to make a new one. Back when Juno was still in elementary school, he was the same nerd as always, apart from being just a bit bigger than most of the normal kids. This was probably why none of the bullies ever tried to mess with him. In fact, he was the one doing the bullying instead. One day, another kid at school slapped his chubby friend and stole his Steam Deck right out of his hands. The kid refused to give it back. That smug little scumbag even invited Juno to a public fight for it. In the following days, Juno got himself ready to throw hands. For the first time in his life, he was fully aware that everyone in school would be watching. Everything felt fine up until the day of the fight. Then, he suddenly took a mind-numbing uppercut to the chin that sent his glasses flying off into the dirt. Getting hit so hard right at the start left him dizzy. After stumbling around for a few seconds, he somehow managed to steady himself. At that moment, though he already felt defeated, that one punch shattered whatever confidence he had in his fighting skills. His palms got sweaty, his knees were weak, and his arms felt heavy. He could barely breathe from the sheer fear of losing. All the kids around him burst out laughing, mocking him for lying there like a total loser. Even now, he sometimes wonders if his height stopped growing because of that one humiliating day. Back in the present, he wakes up looking completely lost, and Doyle tells him that he passed out. Ryujin explains that he tapped into Juno's chi point, and the nerd asks if that is the same kind of thing he saw in his cheap martial arts manga. Doyle admits she is not really sure how it happened. It says Ragium somehow made him stronger, and Ragium grins as he tells Juno that he is now strong enough to take down 100 men. At once hearing that, Juno believes the story and says he really feels power rushing through his body. Later that night, Duel gets a bit annoyed that Rugyam has followed her all day, even her home. He calmly says he will leave once she reaches her place. But when she curiously asks where he lives, and hears how far away it actually is, she ends up becoming the guide instead. On the way, she buys him ice cream, and Bro's mind is completely blown by the divine dessert he has never tasted before. As he relaxes while enjoying the treat, she suddenly asks if he is hiding something from her. She points out that the way he talks, and all that chi point talk, make him sound like someone from a long time ago. At that moment, she nearly figures it out. But before she can say anything, an old lady yells from behind, "That girl should not be walking around so late at night." Our boy quickly turns around, after hearing her assume his gender, and the lady nearly falls back in shock when she realizes he is actually a guy. Annoyed, she calls him ugly for having hair so long, when he is a boy. Ignoring that, Rugyam senses something strange inside her bag. He politely asks the woman to hand him her purse, which only makes things look even more suspicious. The lady panics and starts screaming for help, and Duel quickly steps in to separate them. Before things go too far before she can even apologize, the woman snatches her purse and runs off. Like she is hiding something, Duel turns to Rujium and asks why he did that to the poor woman, and he quietly says she had something dangerous on her, secretly holding the drug behind his back. He is shocked that the product has already spread this far. In a market back with Junho, he sits quietly in his room, wondering if it is really true that he now has the power to beat bullies. He gets up and measures his height, which last peaked when he was 8 years old, seeing that he still has not grown an inch. Junho convinces himself he cannot win in a fight. Deep down, he is still the same scaredy cat he was back then. The next day at school, DOOL is surprised to see Ryum arrive early in the morning. What surprises her even more is his new hairstyle. She laughs and asks if he changed it because of what happened last night, but he replies he just did it because it is getting hot. Then he mentions that the other classrooms look pretty clean. When there is no crowd so early in the morning, Duel realizes that he is looking out the window to see if Juno will really show up. Like they agreed, he says it is important for him not to be there if he wants to test Juno's courage, and he is keeping an eye on her, so she does not interfere with the plan. With that, the two quietly watch Janiel take off his shoe, and throw it away. He orders his new, chubby victim to crawl on all fours and fetch the nasty slipper with his mouth. Like a dog, the other students gather around and don't dare to interfere because Janiel is the top dog. Whenever Ryujin is not there, Ryujin asks Dula if she thinks Juno will man up and fight back. But she replies that, no matter how much Juno trusts him, it is not easy for someone to build that much courage. Overnight, right then, Juno bursts through the door, where he sees Janiel, ordering the chubby kid to just do it, like usual, to get his phone back. Juno picks up the shoe and hurls it across the room, as it hits Janiel in the face. Juno tells the bully to hand over the phone. Like a good boy, the bully stands there stunned, unable to believe the guts on that little nerd. His lackey steps forward and asks if Juno is betting on Ryojium to save him, or if he has a loose screw in his head. Even though he is shaking from head to toe, Juno declares that he came to end Jinel's rule. And while he has not grown an inch in the last 11 years, he is no longer the coward he used to be. Dula is completely blown away. That little baby Juno actually grew a pair. She asks Ryu Gaiam if Juno can really destroy anyone. He fights like he promised, but Ryu Gaiam casually says no, since Juno's chi point hasn't awakened yet. Back with Juno, he fearlessly faces his first opponent, Kim Chong, on the boys' throw there. Hardest punches at the same time, and all the students freeze in shock as Juno gets dropped to the floor by a brutal hook. Chong Wan is impressed that the little nerd even managed to land a solid punch earlier, but as a seasoned fighter, he easily dodges it and delivers a clean hit to Juno's liver. He then follows it up with a punch to the face, leaving Juno confused about why he is the only one getting beat up. Seeing the beating go too far, Chong Wan's buddy tells him to chill before he seriously hurts the kid, but the bully ignores him and keeps punching and kicking Juno without mercy. At that moment, Juno realizes he has been terrified the whole time, as Chongwan looks down at him like he is worthless and prepares to finish the job. Duel starts to panic. She angrily asks why Ryujiong lied to Juno about becoming stronger, when he is clearly still the same weakling. However, Ryujiong stays calm and says that while fear and courage are opposites, they both come from believing in yourself. Right then, Juno reaches his breaking point and awakens his true potential, transforming all his fear into raw courage. He slams his head into the tall guy's chin with a fierce headbutt that sends him crashing to the ground. All the students stare in shock at Juno's hidden strength, but Manga quickly notices that he won by pure luck, hitting the chin by chance. Juno then calls out to the next person, ready for a beating, but Jano responds with a brutal kick, straight to his face after that. Janel orders his lackey to take the piece of trash out. To his surprise, Juno slowly stands back up, ready to keep fighting with no regard for his own body. Juno charges straight at the school's top dog, only to take a hard knee to the chest. Daniel slams him into the lockers and starts pounding his face like a punching bag. He mocks him by asking if his brain stopped growing, along with his height, and if he forgot what happened. Back in elementary school, all the students watch in shock as Janel keeps insulting and pummeling Juno, trying to make him realize that standing up to him was the worst mistake of his life. Just then, our boy steps in and stops the senseless beating. He tells Juno that Janiel is not someone he can defeat. Right now, however, Juno slowly gets up with a grin and questions if that cheat point stuff was all just a lie. Every hit hurts like hell, but through that pain, Juno learns something important about himself. He tells Ryojium to leave it to him, because this is his fight. Taking a boxing stance again, he makes it clear he hasn't lost yet. Hearing that, Ryojium feels proud of his courage and pats him on the shoulder, as Janel wonders if that means Juno is actually challenging him. He suddenly takes a punch, straight to his satisfyingly punchable face. Juno dodges his counter and quickly thinks about what to do next. But Janel calls him a fool for underestimating him and drives his knee into Juno, leaving him barely standing. While Juno stands there blankly, Janel throws more punches and kicks him to the floor. Watching him get up again, Janel admits he is impressed by the kid's stubborn resilience. At that moment, Juno realizes that the power Ryujin gave him lets him endure any hit that comes his way. But he also understands that endurance means nothing if he cannot fight back. Janel jumps on top of him to finish him off, calling him a pathetic nerd who will never change. That's when Juno wishes he could be like his favorite anime heroes and pulls off an attack straight from his favorite manhwa. Both Ryujin and Diol are completely confused as they watch this dude strike a dramatic anime pose, ready to settle the score from 10 years ago. Janel yells at the nerd for breaking his nose, but Juno swiftly takes him down with moves that look straight out of an action scene. To finish things off, Juno grabs Janel by the head and slams him straight into the ground. All the students stare in pure disbelief, wondering if he really just defeated the school's king. Meanwhile, Juno finally realizes that the strength was within him all along, and all he ever needed was to believe in himself. Juno then climbs up to the rooftop, holding his face that still throbs from all the beating he's taken. He looks around, trying to find the guy who called him up there. A voice from above catches his attention, and when he looks up, he sees Ryojium, whom he instantly calls his master. Ryojium seems puzzled and asks why he called him that, but the nerd just admits that it feels oddly good and decides right there to make him his master. Ryojium drops down an instant, circling him like he's inspecting some weird experiment. He mentions that he thought what Juno used earlier was chi, but now it seems like something entirely different. The nerd insists that he only tried copying a move from a cheap manhwa, which Ryujium amusingly calls the modern version of a martial arts novel. Chunio then asks if the master had blessed him with that power temporarily, since it now feels like it's fading away. Noticing his mood drop, Ryujium questions why he looks so down, even after beating the bully, since he should be happy after the achievement. When the nerd admits that he wishes for such power permanently, Ryojium says he'll let him have it, but only under one condition: that he helps him. The boy's eyes light up, barely believing what he's hearing, while Ryojium internally knows it's all nonsense, since no such power actually exists. Still, Juno happily accepts the deal, proudly calling it his duty as a disciple. Without warning, his so-called master leaps off the rooftop and orders him to follow. Juno panics for a second, realizing he definitely can't jump off that height, so he bolts for the stairs, already sure that his master's idea of training is about to be absolute hell. Next day, while D1 cooks breakfast, he shouts at his brother to wake up already. But Minguk doesn't move an inch. Getting irritated, Diwan complains if he is raising his son instead. And in anger, he pulls off the blanket, only to freeze at what he sees. Shocked, he quickly calls Rujaham and explains everything, sounding desperate enough to sell his soul, as he tells him that he is ready to cooperate. In any way it turns out, his brother now has the same curse marks as on high, and his condition has worsened so much that he cannot even wake up, his body covered in sweat, with no one else to turn to. Dahan pleads miserably for help, making it clear that this little brother is the only family he has left. Ryujin tells him to call a number he gives, and promises to help with all he has. As they talk, Ryujium is casually trimming his hair, realizing that long hair for men isn't really in trend anymore. After he hangs up Jinal, the CK Shielder's doctor gets a call from the chairman Jongwon. The chairman says things have gone wrong while he was dealing with Dula, and the doctor asks if this dual girl is the same one he had told his daughter to handle. At that moment, the chairman's daughter reminds him to get back to golf. Already as the chairman hits the golf ball while staying on call, the doctor learns that Park Daeyeon lied about already dealing with the girl, which is why Young-won now wants Gainal to take care of it himself. The redhead then informs his boss that the newly developed ampoules of 100,000 doses are ready and that their distribution has already started. He explains that the new ampoules are highly addictive, and because of that they have gone viral. His plan is to spread them all across the globe. Meanwhile, Dahan reaches the Yongjin High Gym Hall. He senses someone nearby and looks around, only for Un-hai to appear out of nowhere, scaring him half to death. Startled, Dahan asks if she's the one he called, and if she, being a woman, is actually capable of helping him. Un-hai grows serious and manifests her chi, threatening if he wants to dance while being naked. The guy freezes in disbelief, realizing even she can use chi, and starts wondering who these people really are. Un-hai grabs him by the collar to check his curse, but pauses when she feels something oddly familiar about it, and Diwan immediately slaps her hand away. He demands to know when Ruyum will arrive, since he mentioned he was fixing something right then. Ruyum walks in casually and pulls back his hood. Both Dahan and Un-hai look shocked at his new haircut. Ruyum explains that he was busy cutting his hair, and asks if he finally looks normal, enough to blend in this new era. Like the rest of them, Un-hai questions why he suddenly decided to cut his hair short, while Diwan complains that he was wasting time in a salon when he is dying of worry. Rujum replies that at first he thought he had nothing to do with this generation, but he has realized that if he wants to face others, like Yan-woo in this era, he must first understand and adapt to this world. He then tells them that a dangerous substance is about to spread worldwide, and that he needs both of them to work with him to stop it before they leave. Ryung asks Un-hai if Yunwo has returned. The lady looks surprised and asks if he met him somewhere, but Ryung calmly says that he only sensed his energy. Dayan, startled as always, asks if he knows who this energy belongs to. Ryujin ignores his question and tells them both to move quickly. Dayan says that all he cares about right now is saving his brother Ryujin, then shocks him again by saying that he already checked on Minguk, and that his condition seems to be beyond saving. He adds that some other elements have been mixed with the original cursed D1, asks if this could be caused by another type of ampoule, and Ryujin replies that he must find out the exact contents of a new ampoule before it's too late. Daehan finally admits that from what he has heard, there are plans for the mass production of a new ampoule that gives stronger effects, though the risks and stakes are much higher. He frowns, asking if finding that new ampoule could be the key to saving his brother's life. Ryu Jiam notices that Daehan is starting to get suspicious, so he tells him that no hospital in the world can save his brother. To calm his doubts, Ryo Jiam lightly strikes his fist against the spot where Daehan's mark was, and to Daehan's shock, the cursed skin instantly returns to normal. Daehan thanks him as he is now satisfied, that his brother's fate is in safe hands. And the three of them sit together to discuss their next move. Unai asks if Ryujin has any lead on where to find a new ampoule. He admits that the information is hard to obtain, and that only the ampoules currently being prepared are transported anywhere. When Unhai suggests going directly to the higher UPS, Ryojin pulls out an ampoule and says that their real goal is to destroy it. He explains that the higher UPS might actually be working for someone even more powerful. Dahan agrees, saying it would be too early to confront them, and offers to find a way to gather information. From the inside, Unhai doesn't look too pleased with that idea. Dahan then says there's something he still hasn't told them. He reveals something so unexpected that even Ryujin looks stunned, refusing to believe what he just heard. The next day at school, the classroom teacher looks irritated when no one gives the usual morning greeting and demands to know where the class president is. One of the students tells him that the prez is absent, which shocks the class since Minguk never skips a day. On top of that, the bully Jinul is missing too, making Janho wonder if he's too embarrassed to show his face. After what happened later, while Ryujin is at the rooftop, Duel storms in with an angry look and demands to know if he's hiding something about Minguk, since he never misses school even when sick. When our guy calmly says he has no idea, the girl calls him a liar. Ryu Jae-hyun looks at her and asks if she's worried, then tells her that Minguk will be back, before she even realizes it. The last time he visited Minguk to check on him, Ryu Jae-hyun used his chi to stabilize his condition, making sure it didn't worsen, though he couldn't wake him up, and knew the guy might be asleep for months. Hearing him say that Minguk will be back soon makes Dilla suspicious that Ryu Jion might know more than he's letting on, and she tries to make him spill it. Just then, he senses someone nearby and quickly covers her mouth, warning her that someone is here. The door opens and Saiwon walks in. Looking for Dilla, Duel tells Ryujin not to worry, since she has already told Saiwon everything. Our guy looks tense as he asks her, what exactly did she tell her? You'll hug Sien tightly, and says that they're best friends, so of course it's natural. She then pats her from behind and nudges her forward, telling her to greet him properly, since this is the first time they're meeting like this. Sien blushes faintly, and as Ryugum steps a little closer to say something, the story shifts back to the day when D1 revealed the shocking news. He explained that the boss's real objective was to target both Rugium and Duel, though Duel was the original target, and that he had tried to stop it by giving a false report. Rugium asks D1 who his boss really is, and whether Duel is being targeted. D1 admits that he isn't completely sure, but explains that his boss owed someone a favor, and couldn't refuse the request, even if it meant putting someone in danger. He looks uneasy while saying it, knowing how bad it sounds. As the story returns to the present, Rio Game leans in close to Sun and whispers something in her ear, which instantly turns her from blushing to shocked. DOOL demands to know what he just said, while her best friend dashes off, faster than a guy with a bad stomach. After cheap street food, right after she leaves, Unhai appears on the scene. Rugium immediately asks if she managed to find any details about the boss D1 mentioned. He questions if the man's last name is Choi, and when Unhai confirms that it is, she looks surprised that he already knew. Ryujin stares at her with a dangerous look in his eyes, as she asks whether he remembers Choi Jaeyoung from back in the old days. Rugum nods and says that he remembers the beast clearly, explaining that Choi Jaeyoung used to be one of Yan Wu's subordinates when he himself was okay. Yan Wonhai then continues with her report, revealing that the same beast has now become the chairman of CK Shielders and goes by the name Choi Jong-won in this era. The scene shifts to the fact chubby CEO Jong-won himself, sitting comfortably as his stomach growls, telling his subordinates to hurry up and bring him something to eat before he loses his temper. As they make their way back home, Duel cannot hold back her curiosity and asks Ryujeong what he said to Zian. That made her take off like that. He tells her she would not believe it, but when she keeps pressing him, he finally admits that all the harassment she ever faced was because of Zian. The revelation leaves Duel stunned, and although she questions his judgment at first, it slowly becomes clear that he is right. Truth hits harder than she expects. She rushes ahead and is unable to contain her emotions, saying she will walk on her own from there. There was a time when Dool sat quietly by herself on the school stairs, and Sun had called her name for the very first time, asking if they could be friends. Lila told her that befriending her would get her no perks, but Sun said that all she wanted was for both of them to be happy together, and nothing more. Those words once sounded so genuine, and as the memories resurface, every little moment plays before her eyes. She remembers them eating lunch together, shopping for clothes, and even singing their hearts out at the karaoke bar. Before Yin finally snaps back to the present moment, realizing how far she has drifted from what they once had. As Yin walks up the stairs, she recalls the moment when Ryujeong had called her out for hating Duna, and facepalms, wondering how she even ended up in this ridiculous mess, before muttering curses under her breath about all of them somewhere else. Jianil and Kyung discuss their upcoming plans, until Kyung's daughter interrupts them. Kyung asks Jianil to step out for a bit, then turns to his daughter and apologizes for the mistakes he made. He tells her not to worry, because he has already entrusted the matter to Jae O'Neill, and promises that everything will be fine. Meanwhile, at a dimly lit hideout, Dahan raises his voice and says they do not have much time left, because the new drug must already be spreading. Since his team has not been ordered to handle the distribution, he suspects that someone has caught on to them. Still, he says there are other ways to get the pills, since not every deal needs a middleman. He explains that some of these trades happen secretly, similar to how street drugs are exchanged. Unhai looks confused, so Ryujeong asks him how those secret deals actually work. Dahan explains that people usually use SNS and Telegram, but when neither of them understands what that means, he adds that Telegram is a messaging app on a phone. Even then, both of them remain completely lost, which makes Dahan lose his patience. Unhai tells him to start from the beginning, but he says it would be better to tell someone who actually understands how it all works. And Ryujin immediately realizes who that person is. A dealer drops a message in a Telegram group about a mysterious new pill, calling it a vitamin shot, and Juno quickly replies that he needs two. The dealer tells him to wait at the last stop of X line. So Juno sits quietly, reminding himself that his only job is to make sure the deal goes through safely. He remembers Ryu Game saying that he'll appear once the trade is done, but still warns the guy that these people are dangerous. Even so, a wave of anxiety hits him, and just as the train nears its final station, he suddenly feels the urge to use the restroom. Alone in the cabin, Juno waits, wondering where the dealer is, when the door suddenly opens and a thug steps in, ordering him to come forward. Assuming he's the dealer, Juno notices that the man won't even make eye contact. Trying to stay calm, he approaches to hand over the cash, but the thug jerks his hand back at the last second. To take a call, the sudden motion startles Juno, as he hears the thug tell his accomplice that the trade is canceled because the director has given the order. That line alone makes Juno's gut twist, and he realizes something about this setup feels wrong. The thug narrows his eyes and gestures for Juno to come closer. Juno's heartbeat spikes. He wonders where his master is, then both deciding to stall them and save his skin. But as soon as he enters the next car, his stomach drops. Another man is waiting there. He is blocking the exit and leaves him completely trapped, and a familiar voice cuts through the tension. And Juno freezes. The man turned out to be D1, who calmly introduces himself as an ally. Juno breathes a deep sigh of relief, believing he is finally safe, now that Minguk's brother has arrived. His relief, however, vanishes the very next second when Dahan grabs him by the collar and asks the other thugs if this brat was giving them trouble before slamming him against the wall. He scolds them, saying he had dozed off in the next car and had no idea this was a trade area for Team 2. Juno looks lost, unable to figure out who's on whose side, while Dahan turns toward the thug and asks if he plans to greet him or not. The thug quickly bows his head and apologizes, yet his timid response only annoys Dahan even more. Meanwhile, Ryujium is wandering through the subway, like a clueless kid in a giant mall, trying to figure out where he is supposed to go. Back in the cabin, Dahan decides to improvise and orders the thug to hand over the newly developed pill. Since he's running short on time, the thug immediately says that Team 3 has not been authorized to receive it. Yet so Dahan smoothly changes his tone, acting relaxed while trying to dig for more information. He claims that Team 3 will get their supply the following day and asks for the storage location. The thugs exchange uncertain glances, but Dayan continues, saying they might as well study the pill beforehand, so it saves time later. Just when the thugs begin to relax and almost reveal something, their phones buzz at the same time, with a warning not to trust Team 3, especially their leader Dahan. Dahan instantly realizes his cover is blown and sends both men flying across the cabin before they can act. He apologizes mid-strike, saying he has a valid reason for his sudden aggression. One thug manages to block a punch and pushes back, but Dahan shifts his footing and quickly reasserts dominance. The second thug, seeing no way out, injects himself with the upgraded drug, and Dahan immediately knows. This fight just became serious. The thug punches him into the railing, with enough force to make the train shake. Smirking as he says he wasn't even trying, Dahan smiles mockingly, admitting that Team 2 has impressive adaptability. As the second thug struggles to get up, he points out that, even if they can't match Team 1's pace, they're still far superior to Team 3. While Dahan is surprised to see the guy still standing, the thug scoffs and reminds him that Team 3 was excluded from the new pill. The thug then raises a syringe to inject himself again. Before he can react, Dayan closes the distance and crushes the syringe in one clean motion, trying to end the fight before it can escalate. Dahan tells the thug not to underestimate his team as he lunges forward with another attack. But before he can land the finishing blow, the second thug grabs him from behind and mocks him for being a weak leader. Dahan grits his teeth and breaks free, planning a quick uppercut kick straight into the first thug's jaw. Without wasting a second, he rolls into a somersault and launches into a clean bicycle kick. The second thug barely budges, catches Dahan off guard, and sends him crashing into the wall. With a single punch, Junyo, watching from the side, wonders out loud how someone like Dahan even became a team leader. But Dahan waves him off and yells at him to run and hide in the car behind them. Dahan takes a breath, trying to assess the situation, knowing full well he has no drug enhancement to rely on. Both thugs inject themselves again and vanish from his sight, reappearing behind him before he can react. He struck hard, sent flying, and the beating continues until the windows rattle and crack under the pressure. Yet when the thugs try to deliver the final blow, Dahan remains standing, his eyes glowing faintly. They realize, too late, that he has injected himself with the drug. With a grin, Dahan steps forward and ends the fight in a single. Devastating Hit Hunho stands frozen, overwhelmed by what he just witnessed, hardly believing that the man, who was moments ago on the floor, is now the one standing tall. As night falls high in the mountains, Ryujium and the squad hold the surviving thugs for questioning. Dahan sighs, saying he might lose his job if Ryujium keeps causing scenes like this. Ryujium shrugs and claims the subway turned out to be trickier than he expected. Junio points out that he had warned him earlier, but Ryujium didn't listen. He then asks if Dahan's job would be safe if they just kill the thugs. After getting the answers, and Dahan nearly loses it, shouting that he's out of his mind, Junio asks if he should take his leave. But Ryujin insists he stay for the questioning. Daeon stresses that they must hurry, or the thug's absence will raise suspicion and cause even more trouble. He mutters that the thugs probably won't talk, even with a knife at their throats. But Daewon smirks and says, they have someone perfect for this. Right then Eunhye appears wearing a bold, distracting outfit, and confidently sits on one thug's lap. She asks if she really has to do this, in front of everyone, and Ryu Jaeum tells her to get the information quickly. Using her illusion, spell her lips curl into a sly grin, as she touches the thug's cheek, and says they're about to have some fun together. In his mind, the guy recalls all the tough missions he endured for his organization, strengthening his mental resistance. He believes nothing could ever make him betray the group. That means more to him than family. However, when Eunhye uses her charm on him, he suddenly finds himself drifting into a soft, dreamlike world lying in bed. He looks around in confusion until he sees Eunhye sitting on top of him. The bewitching baddie orders him to tell her what she wants, promising he can have what he desires in return. Back in reality, everyone is creeped out by the twisted expression on the supposedly unbreakable guy's face. Putting that aside, Eunhye asks him to reveal the location of the drug. His partner looks baffled when he easily blurts out that it is hidden in director Cha Jae-yeol's basement. Hearing that, Dahan is stunned that there was a freaking basement somewhere. He never saw it in all his years working there. Ryujin then questions why the man keeps spreading the harmful drug if he already knows about its side effects. With a cold and detached tone, the guy admits that almost every team, except Dahan's, knows about the operation. What is worse, he says, the main targets are children, even though the drug side effects hit them hardest. Still, he claims he has no clue why the distribution spreads so fast, and insists he is only in it for the money. That seriously pisses Dahan off, and he gets ready to smash the man's face in. But Eunhye stops him, because she has something else in mind. In a dream world, she gives the guy permission to smash her. Hearing that, the fool starts drooling, unaware that he is actually on top of his partner, while the guy goes ham on top of his buddy. Eunhye remarks that this is far more punishing than simply killing him after that. Ryujin decides it is time to begin a mission. He orders Eunhye to infiltrate, using the thirsty guy's appearance, while Daewon stays behind her as backup. The next day, Ryujin meets Saiwon at school, and suddenly mentions that he knows she is Choi Kyung's daughter. He still cannot believe that the man has been here long enough to have a daughter. He remembers how far that guy used to go, just to protect children. Just then, DOOL pops in and drags Soon away, inviting her to grab a bite with her. The scene then shifts to the gym, where he spends the rest of the day training Juno. Later, under the cover of night, Dahan contacts Eunhye through a transmitter device to guide her during the mission. Watching from a rooftop far away, he tells her to move naturally, as if there is no communication. He warns her to stay as low-key as possible, but she tells him to calm his melons. Eunhye points out that the place is radio silent, so there is no one around to worry about. Dahan replies that the higher UPS must be away for an important job, which makes sense. However, his eyes suddenly go wide in shock, and he tells her not to turn around. Standing behind her are the leaders of teams 1 and 2. Dahan quickly commands her to show respect and step aside for her seniors, still unable to grasp why they are here at this time. Sure enough, the two team leaders enter the elevator and ask why she is not coming in. She assures them it is nothing, and waits patiently for the doors to close. At the very last second, the leader of Team 2 stops the door and snatches her transmitter. He questions why she has it, when she is not even on a mission, demands to know who she is talking to. Eunhye senses the powerful aura radiating from both leaders, and her comms suddenly go silent. Dahan panics and yells at her to respond, but a few moments later, she finally tells him to chill out, because she is already in the basement, when she confidently adds that the team leaders were no match for her. warns her that something about this whole encounter feels seriously suspicious. Inside the basement, she notices the room is completely empty, and the only way forward is through the vents. While grumbling about how tight they are, she crawls through and finally lands in the next room. Daehan praises her for the good work and says he will inform Ryujin, but she tells him to hold on, because what she found is not pills or a stash of drugs. Daehan freezes in shock when he suddenly hears the voice of director Cha-jo, Neil himself, speaking through the comms. The director, with an anticipating smile on his face, politely asks Eun-hye who she is. He seems surprised as he was expecting Daehan to come. Instead, Jinal steps closer to the transmitter and admits he had long suspected. Daehan's reports to the boss were suspicious. That is why he met up with Minguk for dinner one night and secretly grabbed his phone. While Minguk was away from the table, he casually installed a virus in it. Daehan instantly realizes there is no drug stash because the mission was compromised from the start. He asks Eun-hye if she can escape on her own. Hearing that, she calmly places her hand on Janiel's chest and blasts him away with a powerful thrust. As she retreats, she tries to use her illusion power on the director, but right before it reaches him, the team leaders who were supposed to be knocked out suddenly show up and block her path. With both her hands restrained, Team 1's leader prepares to slap her so hard. She won't wake up, however. Daehan shows up right on cue and roundhouse kicks the guy into the next dimension. He tells the losers, it is really not cool to gang up on a lady like that. Then the director curiously asks Daehan how exactly he managed to discover his secret stash. As Daehan scans the room and realizes they have already moved the entire supply, the other team leaders inject themselves with a new product. The director warns them to watch out for the chick as they start approaching menacingly. Daehan also buffs himself with the old drug he had on him and tells Eun-hye that their top priority now is to escape safely. With that, the team leaders tag team them with extraordinary speed, aiming to eliminate Daehan and capture Eun-hye. When Daehan realizes their intent, he uses his body to shield her and buys enough time for her to blast both goons away with her chi, watching her do a prayer stance. He asks in frustration why she cannot just charm them and make them knock each other out for good and annoyed. Eun-hye replies that the charm spell drains an insane amount of chi, so she needs time to recover. After her failed attempt to use it on the director, hearing that he charges in to buy time for her, but he gets blown back hard by a wooden staff, straight to the gut. The other team leader gives him no time to recover, diving down from above to completely shatter his bones. However, the director orders the team's two leaders to halt, midway questioning if he is really willing to go as far as killing a former member of the family. After showing mercy, Junil asks Daehan why he betrayed him, even though they were like brothers to each other. That question reminds Daehan of the time when Junil helped him and Minguk during their hardest struggles. He asks Jinal if he even understands how important Minguk is to him. The director admits he knows that his little brother means the world to him. He even says he sees Minguk as a little brother too. Daehan explains his brother is suffering badly right now because he made the mistake of sharing his pills. He stopped giving them to him after seeing the side effects. Yet, it is strange how Minguk managed to get more of them, and he claims that is why his condition keeps getting worse. D1 firmly states his brother is the only reason he has gone this far. Hearing that, a twisted grin spreads on Jinal's face. The sick bastard reveals he was the one supplying those pills to Minguk. All along, that seriously pisses Daehan off. So he drives a brutal punch straight into the bastard's gut, launching him like a torpedo into the wall. Both team leaders freeze, in shock at his sudden burst of power. They notice two empty injections lying on the floor, seeing blood come out from every hole in his body. Eun-hye realizes in horror that he overdosed on the drug for a massive power boost, but that leaves his body permanently damaged. Burning with vengeance, Dahan demands to know if the two team leaders were in on it as well, but instead of answering, the director answers his question with a painful kick that sends him crashing into the wall behind. With Dahan down for good, the director turns his sights on Unhai next. Meanwhile, our boy is sprinting full speed outside after receiving Dahan's distress message, as Gianil and his men dump Dahan's body off a bridge and take Unhai away with them. Ryujium dashes rooftop to rooftop, racing through the night to reach them as fast as he possibly can. As the story rewinds a little, Ryujium is seen sitting inside the National Intelligence Service Research Institute, keeping his word about coordinating with the research, when he suddenly receives a call from D1. The guy sounds frantic and tells Ryujium that he's heading out to back up Unhai, asking him to come along right away. Ryujium instantly grows tense, realizing that the organization might have figured out their plan. He rushes out without wasting a second. Back in the present, Ryujium senses a familiar aura in the air and decides to take a detour. Meanwhile, Dahan is slowly sinking deeper and deeper, refusing to let go of hope, even as the water pulls him down. With every passing second, he starts to feel strangely calm, and just as his vision blurs, he sees someone approaching. For a moment, he mistakes the figure for his father, but it turns out to be Ryujium. Ryujium pulls him back up to safety, and D1 catches his breath before thanking him, saying that once again he owes him. Ryujium asks what happened, and Dahan explains through heavy breaths that Gianil showed up out of nowhere. He adds that Gianil is an absolute powerhouse, and the organization's second in command. Because of frustration, the guy literally starts throwing wild punches in anger. Ryujium punches him lightly in the stomach to bring him back to his senses and tells him to calm down before he burns himself out completely. D1 collapses to the ground and bursts into tears, saying that he trusted Gianil with everything. After a few moments, once he finally stopped shaking, Ryujium quietly asks about Unhai. Johan admits that he doesn't know what happened to her, since he passed out midway, and apologizes for messing up the whole plan. Ryujium keeps his calm and says that they will find another way out of this mess. Meanwhile, Unhai ends up being kidnapped and taken to an unknown place. The doctor asks if she feels comfortable, to which she bluntly replies that she doesn't at all. Gino steps forward and tells her that all she needs to do is answer a few questions, and he will let her go. When he asks why she was helping Dahan, the lady firmly says that she would rather speak to the director. Instead of him, the doctor gives a creepy grin, saying that must have been her plan from the start, but adds that things won't go her way so easily. He asks if she happens to share some secret with the director, then tells her she's lucky, since the boss himself has arrived. He immediately bows deeply as Jong-won enters the room. The fat boss laughs and says he just came by for a drink. From the looks of it, they seem to have a guest today. Jong-won waves his hand, telling the doctor to leave them alone. Once they're alone, he sighs and says that his subordinate can be a real pain sometimes, though he admits the guy does his job well enough. Unhai nods, agreeing that he was indeed sharp. The boss tells her not to hurt his subordinate, since he considers him family. But before he can finish, an illusion attack flashes behind him. Unhai tries to take advantage of the moment, swiftly moving behind him, but Jong-won reacts instantly and throws a heavy punch that she barely dodges. The woman realizes that the beast in front of her hasn't changed one bit from the old days, when he went by the name Choi Kyung the Beast. Jong-won straightens up and says politely that he has settled quite well into this era. He mentions that he now has a family, along with money and power, and admits that he owes it all to Yen-woo, the one who made it possible for him to live such a life of comfort and luxury. The lady asks the beast why he didn't seem surprised at all to see her, wondering if he already knew she existed in this era. As Jong-won casually pours himself another drink, he says it's not really shocking, considering he too somehow ended up here. He then looks at her and asks if Chog Rijum is also here, and if she has really betrayed Okian to side with him. Instead, Unhai plays it smart and dismisses it as nonsense, saying she was only near Rijum for a spy mission. To make her story sound more convincing, she adds that Ryu Jiam is currently posing as a manager for the girl named Dule, the one Jongwon has been searching for. But as she speaks, her nerves begin to show, and sweat slowly rolls down her face. Jongwon leans back and says, "That's a major piece of news," asking whether she has reported it to OK Yan yet. Unhai smirks and calls him naive, saying that Yanwoo would probably be happier if they caught Ryujium themselves before reporting anything. The beast laughs mockingly, asking if her little plan is just an excuse to crawl back into favor. Unhai fires back that from what she remembers, he was never one to avoid a fight. Yangwon chuckles, saying he no longer wastes time on pointless battles, and adds that their encounter isn't part of Yangwon's current plans, so they can wait until he decides to summon them again. He makes it clear that unlike his previous life, he now has people and things he wants to protect in this world. The scene then cuts to Xian, who's fuming while waiting to be picked up. She mutters that she'll fire the staff, since she clearly told them to come early, so she wouldn't be late for acting class. But just as she's about to make another call, someone places a hand on her shoulder. When she turns around, the man quickly covers her mouth and drags her away. The news reaches Jongwon while he's still eating, and the moment he hears that his daughter has been kidnapped, he fires up in rage, vowing to rip apart whoever's responsible. His officer rushes to report that they've already identified the kidnapper, and the name that comes up is a student called Ryujium. The story then rewinds to Jongwon's past, when he was known as Choi Kyung. A group of soldiers had been ordered to capture him, branded as a criminal, and to kill the child he was carrying with him. Kyung runs desperately through the forest, with the little girl in his arms. The child looks up and asks why he's throwing away his life and reputation for her, but the beast only laughs softly and says, "It's because she's cute." He tells her that brighter days are waiting ahead, just before a rain of arrows starts flying toward him. The soldiers stab him one after another, but soon they start to panic, realizing they were specifically ordered to keep him alive. Their leader yells that this level of attack won't even faze Kyung, and commands the shield unit to advance and strike. Kyung shields the child tightly in his arms and charges forward, smashing through every line of defense. The soldiers' shields shatter like glass under his strength, and bodies fly in every direction. One soldier, thinking this is his moment to shine, manages to get close, enough to swing his sword at Kyung's arm. Kyung meets it with his fist, breaking the blade clean in half. Using that same fist, he slams the man into the ground, so hard that the impact shakes everyone nearby. But before he can regain balance, several soldiers seize the moment and throw ropes around him, managing to restrain the beast in the chaos. One of them grabs the child and brutally beheads her before Kyung's eyes, seeing her lifeless body fall. Kyung's eyes widen with pure rage as his aura explodes, his body transforming into his full beast form. The sight alone terrifies the soldiers, who now realize they've just unleashed something far beyond their control. As the scene shifts back, the big guy wakes up from dream and finds himself next to Janelle. He asks the doctor if he found anything, but the DOC replies that it looks like Ryujium and Dahan are involved, and that their main target might be the Amples. Trying to calm him down, the doctor says he'll handle the matter himself, but the president firmly states that he will deal with it personally. Meanwhile, the security team 3 arrives to check on their leader. Dahan ask him what happened to his body and complain that their team is being left out. Once again, when they keep questioning him and offer them their hand, Dahan slaps the hand and tells them to get lost. Deep down, he feels guilty, but on the surface, he scolds them for being useless trash, Who he cannot rely on, the truth is. He doesn't want to drag his team into the mess. Which explains his harsh tone. His plan works, and the members leave after feeling offended. Once they're gone, Dahan lies down to catch his breath. Just then Ryugam and the nerd Juno appear. Ryugam confirms that Dahan's team has left, and the three sit down together to figure out where the drugs are hidden. Unfortunately, they still have no contact with Unhai, and Ryugam warns them not to act rashly. Heartdine adds that since all trades have stopped, the stash must have been hidden somewhere safe. Right then the nerd thinks up a brilliant idea and argues that the president's daughter, Sun, might know something about the case. Diane accuses the kid of being bolder than he looks, while Ryugium questions him if he actually means they should kidnap her. At that moment, Ryugium receives a call from Diola. The girl sounds panicked and tells her manager that there is a huge problem, and she needs him urgently. Ryugium quickly asks her if someone is attacking her, but the girl explains that it is even worse. She tells him that her friend's son has been kidnapped, and the culprit is none other than the bully Janel. The scene then shifts to Janel showing an ampoule to Sun. He laughs that he never imagined something so powerful could be hidden from the world. He plans on using it to defeat our guy and reclaim his title as the king of the school. Cian screams, demanding to know where she is and why he is doing this to her. Janel grabs her by the cheeks and tells her to stop pretending, saying he already knows that her father is the CEO of the pill factory. He pulls out a blade and threatens to ruin her face if she does not speak up. Just as he is about to hurt her, Dula charges in and tackles the bully away. Saving her friend, Janel becomes furious and injects himself with the ampoules. As he sees Ryugium, Juno, and Dahan arriving, he laughs like a madman, saying that things are going to be different this time. Before he can even finish his line, Ryugame rushes in and grabs him by the throat, strangling him slightly as he demands to know where he got all this information. Ryugium even mocks the guy, arguing that unlike what the bully was boasting, nothing looks different even this time. Gino argues that it is all Ryo Jaya's fault and refuses to say anything. The door suddenly bursts open, blasting the poor bully away as Jong-won steps inside. The doctor also enters and claims that, just as they suspected, Ryum and his group are the ones behind the kidnapping. The misunderstanding grows serious, and unfortunately soon lies unconscious. Ryujum and Jong-won manifest their chi as both of them prepare for a fierce showdown. The ground trembles as Choi Kyung approaches, his presence alone heavy enough to make the air tighten. Yujum immediately senses the sheer force radiating from him and realizes this man isn't here to talk. Without hesitation, he tells the others to get away while they still can, confident that he can handle what's coming. Kyung lunges forward, his fist slamming into the floor, hard enough to crack the concrete. But Ryugam dodges just in time. Dust swirls as he charges, his silent tiger fist technique, and both men strike at once, their punches colliding with a thunderous shockwave that ripples through the station. Meanwhile, the other team bosses chase after Dahan and the crew, but freeze when they see their own leader launched into the ceiling like a helium balloon. Kyung lands back on the ground, unharmed and furious, while the pill doctor, watching from afar, realizes that Ryugium's strike wasn't aimed to injure, but to weaken the structure and make the ceiling collapse, giving his teammates enough time to escape. The second team boss immediately makes a call, while Kyung turns to Gunnel, ordering him to retrieve Sun and saying he will join him after taking care of Ryugium himself. Inside the speeding car, Sun slowly wakes up, clutching her head and groaning in pain. Dool gently tells her to try remembering what happened, and Sun suddenly recalls how Dool had saved her. She asks how she even knew where she was, and Juno jumps in with an over-the-top explanation of the entire situation, which only makes her stare at him in shock. The realization hits her hard that Dula risked herself to save her, despite everything she had done. Before she can speak, Juno cuts to the main point and asks if she knows where the pills are. Daehan calmly explains that they need that information to rescue his brother. Dool adds that the drug is incredibly dangerous, and they don't want Soon getting caught up in it either. Sung glances out the window, her expression softening as she admits that the pills are probably hidden at her house, since it's the safest place she can think of. Moments later, the car screeches to a stop in front of her home. Daehan steps out first, only to find a crowd of goons waiting for them. He sighs, saying that even though he drove like a maniac, he's almost embarrassed for being late. Janelle steps forward with a smirk, saying they also raced to arrive first, then asks if Daehan really plans to take on all of them. By himself, Daehan puts on his usual cocky grin and declares that he'll handle all the goons himself, injecting another dose of the drug without hesitation. Janelle yawns as if unimpressed, and the fight kicks off in full chaos. Daehan charges in head first, trading blows and knocking several opponents down with ease. When one thug swings at him, he blocks and counters with a powerful punch, shouting that he'll never lose to small fry like them. But before he can catch his breath, 3 thugs rush him at once and land heavy hits that send him flying through the air. Duel flinches, worried about how he even thought he could take on all of them alone, while Sung mutters that there's nothing they can do. But watch. Juno's hands tremble as he decides he has to step in. But before he can move, a familiar voice cuts through the noise, asking how it's fair for an entire squad to gang up on one man. Everyone turns toward the sound and sees Dahan's team walking in to join the fight. Their leader shouts out orders as the brawl explodes into a full-on battlefield, fists and shouts flying everywhere. The other teams stare in disbelief at Team 3's raw strength and coordination, wondering how a group like that is still ranked third. A few even question, what kind of leader could inspire such loyalty? Team 3, however, quickly notices that the enemy leaders are missing, and that only a few opponents remain. Their leader calls out to Dahan, saying they'll clear a path for him, and Dahan nods, thanking them for the backup. The pill doctor watches the scene with mild amusement, noting how oddly united Team 3 seems, and even finding himself a bit impressed by Daehan's leadership. Daehan then calls out to Jaehyun, boldly proclaiming that he won't lose this time, taking the challenge lightly. The doctor grins and says he'll make things interesting, revealing a stash of drugs he brought along. He injects one of the vials into his arm with a smirk, eager to see how far he can push the fight elsewhere. Raijim's battle with Kyung continues. To shake the ground, Raijim steps back just out of reach, before lunging again to strike. As he closes in, he tells the beast he's been thinking, and finally understands what Kyung thinks of his subordinates trying to reason with him. The beast doesn't respond, and instead launches him backward with a blow from his stomach. Rugium slides across the ground as Kyung snarls at him to die, realizing that words won't work. Rugium grabs a nearby iron rod, deciding to finish the fight quickly. In that moment, he thinks to himself that, in both this life and the last, Kyung has always trusted the wrong people far too much. Daehan uses the last vial of the drug in his possession, thinking this will have to end the fight once and for all. Janil mockingly asks if he's holding up, and even though Daehan feels his whole body burning, from the inside, he knows he can't stop now. He leaps forward and throws a heavy punch, but the pill doctor shifts to the side with ease. Dodging cleanly, Daehan swings again with a wide hook, but Janil evades every strike with a smirk. Then the pill doctor decides to counterattack and moves in for his own hook. Daehan braces himself and raises his arms to block, yet the impact never comes. He opens his eyes slowly, only to see Jae-hyunil standing there calmly, saying he was just killing time for fun, though to him this fight is anything but fun. Without warning, Jae-hyunil grabs him and slams him into the ground like a rag doll. Gritting his teeth, Daehan gets back up and demands to know what he means by spare time. The pill doctor leans closer and says It might be more entertaining to just explain it. He tells him that from today, the company CK Shields will no longer exist. He admits that he only needed a distraction to steal all the pills amid the chaos, and that everything happening now is part of his carefully laid plan. He continues saying that he always knew their boss was unlike the rest of them, a man who held immense strength, even without relying on the drugs. He says he could never understand it. But one day, he heard something interesting, that there was another person just like him. And now even Choke Reggae shares that same trait. That rumor sparked an idea. So he tracked down a drug-obsessed kid and told him who the real owner of the pill company was, setting up the entire kidnapping. The plan progressed faster than he expected, thanks to Dulla's interference. After that, he deliberately LED'd their boss to the kidnapping site, framing Rio Giam as the culprit. He says it never mattered who won that day, as long as his plan moved forward. D1's still processing everything, asks if that's why he gave the drug to his brother. Gino laughs and mocks his hearing, saying that part wasn't planned at all, and that it was just something he did for fun, the same way he's toying with Dahan right now. Hearing that Dahan's rage boils over, and he charges in for another attack. But this time Janil slashes him across the body, cutting him multiple times. Before he can even react, Dahan realizes that the pill doctor is using tiger claws and charges forward without hesitation, which only amuses Janil, determined to land at least one solid hit. He keeps attacking, but every attempt ends with fresh slashes, cutting across his body until he's covered in wounds. It becomes painfully clear that he's just being toyed with. As Janil lands another deep strike, Dahan starts to lose focus and wonders if this is where it ends for him. But then his expression changes. His frown slowly turns into a grin, and in a blur he appears behind Janil, asking if the maniac enjoyed playing with him. He says he had thought his earlier approach was the only way to win, then calls Janil careless, and delivers a devastating hook that cracks several ribs and sends the doctor flying. Daeon had entered a state known as Jong Ryo, a tranquille méditation technique. Ryagium once explained to him in the car, is a state where the body stops rushing, and the mind clears completely. Dahan looks down at Jaehyun and calmly asks if he had ever wondered about the difference in their strengths, implying that this is the answer. The louder and more chaotic Dahan's surroundings became, the deeper he had to sink into that stillness. Rising to his feet, he demands the location of the pills. Meanwhile outside, Duel spots several thugs exiting the building, carrying briefcases, and wonders if those contain the pills. Juno turns to Sun and asks if they really are, but she shakes her head helplessly and says she doesn't know what they are, or what to do anymore. She trembles, saying her father will soon be caught, and she'll be left all alone again. Diane walks overstepping on a used vial, when suddenly Janil lunges from behind and slashes him across the stomach. The pill doctor smirks and says he nearly fell asleep from Diane's last attack. Dehan's eyes widen as he realizes his first strike wasn't enough, and that he's completely out of pills. Before he can act, Janil places a hand on his shoulder and tells him to stop, saying that considering their past friendship, he should just let it go, but Dahan refuses, tackling him and shouting for him not to move. Janil shoves him aside with a kick and asks what was so special about his brother anyway. Dahan charges again, only to be thrown once more, as Janil tells him he should value his own life more than anyone else's. Dahan pushes himself up, clutching one of Janil's new drugs in his hand, a faint smile forming on his face. Janil stares in disbelief at his audacity and warns him that the dose will kill him instantly. But Dahan doesn't hesitate for a second and drives the needle into his arm. Janil's eyes widen in shock as Dahan whispers that none of it matters, as long as his brother stays alive. The scene cuts back to the past, when D1 was just 9, a kid who dreamed of a normal, happy family life. But that dream shattered when his parents got divorced, after his father's leg injury left him unable to work. The court ruled that Dahan would stay with his father, while Minguk would live with their mother. Innocent and heartbroken Minguk cried at the thought of being away from his brother. Dahan, on the other hand, was angry that he could no longer play with him. But when he saw how much their father had given up on life, he swallowed his frustration, grabbed Minguk's hand, and told him to stay happy with a big grin. He knew their father could barely feed even one of them, so it was better for his little brother to stay safe with their mom. One quiet afternoon at the park, Dahan was sitting on a swing, wondering if Minguk figured out the secret message he left behind. Sure enough, the clever little guy cracked his code and met him there. The brothers kept meeting up in secret for an entire week before finally getting caught. When they got caught, his father scolded him hard for meeting Minguk in secret. It was the first time Diwan ever saw that kind of serious look on his father's face. After that day, time kept passing, and Dahan took comfort in his father's promise that Minguk was living a good life. But one afternoon, he unexpectedly found his little brother waiting at their old secret spot. Panicked Dahan ran up and demanded to know why the hell he came here. Minguk's face was bruised and swollen, yet the kid just smiled and said, "Big brother was too late this time." Dayan asked what happened. He said he fell off the swing, but Dayan knew that was a lie. It didn't take long before he learned their mother's new boyfriend was a useless piece of trash who treated Minguk like a human stress ball. The very next day, Dahan went straight to his mother's apartment and rang the bell. The moment that gold digger opened the door, he stormed and grabbed his brother and bolted out of there as fast as his legs could carry him. That night, the brothers sat together planning where to run next, afraid their dad might find out and send them to an orphanage. When their father finally tracked them down, Dahan thought they were in for a heavy beating, but instead the man pulled them into a tight hug and apologized for not being brave enough to protect Minguk. 2 months passed, and their father died after overworking himself to death. With no one left, the brothers went to an orphanage, and Dahan swore he would raise Minguk no matter how hard things got. Back in the present, Dahan pours every emotion he has into a single punch that catches Gino completely off guard. The downed agents can hardly believe their eyes as Dayan suddenly starts matching the director head-on as Giant watches Dayan go star platinum on him. He's thrilled to see what happens when the old and new drug formulas mix, no matter how many blows he takes. Dahan keeps tanking through and pushing even harder. It's pretty clear by now that his body is breaking apart with every passing second. After Dahan kicks Janil around like a football, the man wishes he could just stall until the guy burns out. But he knows he can't afford to wait any longer. Both of them take a step back, then swing with everything they've got, creating a monstrous shockwave that sends Dahan flying like a rag doll. The director smirks in victory, annoyed that the annoying big brother ruined his perfect outfit. But in the next instant, his eyes nearly pop out in horror. As Diwan stands again, Dianel angrily questions how long he plans to keep fighting like this. Radiating peak aura, Dahan makes it clear he's not stopping until he drops dead. After that, the two keep throwing punches back and forth, both completely drained, yet too stubborn to quit. Eventually, the director lands a clean hit that finally knocks Dahan down and proudly declares it was his win from the start, since he's perfectly synced with the drug. But the big brother rises one last time and keeps pounding the smug bastard into the ground because he made a promise to his father. When his final punch cracks Janil's jaw and drops him cold, Dahan falls beside him with a faint, satisfied smile, relieved that he kept his promise to the very end. Meanwhile, Choi Kyung squares off against our boy. Rujum charges in with a steel bar, but the beast blocks it with his thick arms and shoves him away like nothing. Seeing that, Ryu Jium changes tactics and goes for an overhead strike that uses both his weight and chi. The beast, however, channels his own chi and slams him with enough force to send him crashing into the ceiling. Watching all this Team 2's leader starts to worry. The building might collapse before either fighter does. On the other hand, the other guy can't believe this random dude is going toe-to-toe with their boss. The beast dodges every one of Rugium's attacks, and he is quite disappointed. This is all our boy can manage. Rugium cuts off his trash talk by pulling off a slick backflip, grabbing the steel bar midair, and swinging it with so much momentum, it would have crushed the pig's head. If he hadn't dodged, he doesn't stop there, though. He follows up by breaking all of Choi Kyung's key joints, then lands a quick 2/combo before deciding it's time to end things for good. Outside, the team leaders start panicking, wondering how anyone could possibly stop Ryujin now. Just then the beast grips his neck with both hands and slams him straight into the ground, asking if he really thought the beast was that weak. After that, Choi Kyung hurls him into the wall, leaps high with chi-charged fists, and delivers a devastating blow right to Ryojium's core. Even Einstein couldn't explain how this 300-pound monster just jumped that high anyway. The beast declares that flashy moves mean nothing against someone like him, a man who always ends fights in one strike. Right after saying that his knees buckle, and he realizes his age is finally catching up to him. Taking advantage of the moment, the team leaders ambush the beast while he's at his weakest. That turns out to be a major miscalculation. The beast grabs their tiny heads and slams them into the ground, then charges his fists with chi and crushes them like watermelons. Just then our boy walks out of the dust, and Choi Kyung realizes he faked losing, just to use him to wipe out the traitors. When Ryojim points out that every one of Kyung's men betrayed him, the beast lets out a crazed laugh. Snorlax starts pounding the ground and hitting himself, saying the only reason they turned on him is because he failed to take care of his family. When Ryujin hears him say he's unfit to lead a family or an organization, he quietly says he doesn't want to fight anymore. But the beast gets up, takes his stance, and declares that as boss, it's still his duty to protect his organization. Ryujin ends that argument fast, drawing his lightning strike blade and slicing off the beast's hand. He tells the old man to rest now, because he's always been nothing more than Okian's pawn, used and tossed aside. That one line hits so hard, it nearly gives Choi Kyung a stroke. Ryujin adds that the beast's illegal empire has dragged on long enough, and it's time to end it once and for all. Meanwhile, Choi Kyung drifts into his memories, unable to accept that everyone he trusted was using him from the start. Then his shoes rip apart, and our boy senses the real fight is about to begin. Choi Kyung finally shows why they call him the Beast, roaring that he won't let anyone steal what's precious to him. Ever again, Ryujin cannot believe what he is seeing. He has heard stories about Choi Kyung being called the Supreme Beast, but what he never imagined was that the guy is literally a beast in the flesh. The massive monster charges straight at him, and Ryuga embraces himself to face it head-on. Using his superior speed stat, he slashes the beast with his rod and manages to cut through the left back muscle of the giant, thinking that side would now be left defenseless. As he prepares to go in for another strike, the creature recovers instantly and sends him crashing into the wall. Ryujin is stunned, unable to figure out how the beast healed so fast. The monster charges again, but this time its punch smashes into the wall as Ryujin slips past and cuts through its arm in one clean motion. He keeps wondering how the beast keeps regenerating so quickly, when he's sure his attacks hit their mark. Then, it hits him that the creature has already grown back. The army just sliced off. That's when Ryojim finally understands that the true strength of Choi Kyung in his beast form isn't just his monstrous power, but the terrifying regeneration that makes him nearly impossible to take down. The beast then unleashes his skill called Boar Charge and charges forward like a raging boar. He leaps high before crashing down, with the intent to smash Ryujin beneath him. Fortunately, Ryujin manages to block the blow with his arms, though the impact still rattles him to the core. Strangely, he feels his strength slipping away, as if he's trapped inside an invisible cube that's suppressing his energy and preventing him from unleashing his full power. He realizes that no matter how many times he strikes, it's useless, since the beast just keeps regenerating without pause. Accepting this, he gathers every ounce of his remaining strength into his weapon, channeling his energy until the rod ignites in flames. He hopes that this fire will finally stop the beast's insane healing. Calling it his final strike, Rugium charges in with everything he's got, ready to end it in one blow. Meanwhile, the nerd and Duel are shouting at the men stealing the ampoules, telling them to stop. Their team leader, though, tells everyone to ignore the kids and keep loading the goods. From the back seat of her car, Soon spots another group of armed guys arriving at the scene and starts wondering who these new guys are supposed to be. Back at the fight, the beast prepares his own final attack. He leaps high into the air and unleashes a technique he calls gentle wind shatter, sending shockwaves powerful enough to tear through the ground. Rujim takes the hit head-on and barely survives, coughing up blood but refusing to fall, gathering every last drop of his strength. He charges again and activates his own ultimate skill, the Fireless Extinction Sword. His weapon bursts with scorching energy that engulfs the beast, burning through his hide and roasting him midair. The beast's regeneration finally fails, and as his body weakens, he realizes he can't hold this form any longer and accepts his defeat when the battle settles. Ryugium tells the fallen beast that no one can protect something forever. He admits that even he couldn't do it. He says that living in this era made him understand something crucial, that instead of trying to protect everyone himself, he should have taught those he cared about how to protect themselves. His chest feels heavy as he confesses that he was wrong. Too, as the beast reverts back to his humanoid form, he makes one final request before his time runs out, and he kicks the bucket. Choi Kyung pleads with Ryu Jium to teach his daughter, Si-yin, how to protect herself, smiling faintly as his strength fades away. Right then another figure enters, claiming that he already knew. The beast was destined to lose. From the shadows steps a man, dragging the unconscious body of Jinal. The newcomer, with striking green hair, turns out to be another of Acheon's loyal subordinates, known as the Tyrant Haji Hien, a man who clearly has no hesitation when it comes to spilling blood. The wounded CEO looks at him with worry and asks what he has done to the doctor. Ji Hyun smirks and explains that he promised the redhead a good position if he managed to steal the ampoules properly. To him, the whole thing was just a game of chess. Janil was nothing more than a disposable pawn. He admits that the ending didn't go exactly as planned, which is why he's here now to clean up the mess himself. Ji Hyun says that okay. Hyun has ordered the ampoule to be buried, far away from this world, and that everyone connected to it must be killed. Meanwhile, back at the site where the ampoules were being stolen, the new arrivals have already dealt with the thieves and taken the bags for themselves. As the scene shifts back, Ji Hyun swiftly decapitates the doctor, killing him in an instant. He then smirks, saying the killing part was his own choice, before turning to Ryujin and the president, and telling them they're next. The beast doesn't hesitate for even a second, and charges at the psycho, his punch carrying the weight of 400 pounds of rage. Ryujin watches in disbelief, as the blow rips through the air, tearing a hole straight through what seems to be Jahian's body. But to everyone's shock, the real Jahian remains untouched, having already leapt high into the air. The psycho flips midair, landing gracefully while the beast falls to his knees, clutching the family he just lost. Ji Hyun mocks him for losing his mind over such a trivial thing, saying that Okian had already foreseen the beast attachment to his children. He laughs and asks Choi Kyung if he and Okian weren't his true family, calling the idea absurd. Then he turns to our guy with a sinister grin, saying, One should always start with the tasty ones first. Bursting into manic laughter, Ji Hyun lunges forward and the two clash head-on, their aura and chi energy colliding, and shaking the air around them. For a moment, it seems like a tie, but the psycho ends up overpowering our guy. Ryujim can't believe it because as far as he remembers, this guy was never that strong. He knows well that, with his current energy level, he stands no real chance of defeating him. The green-haired man suddenly vanishes, while Ryujim is lost in thought, and reappears to his left, ready to land another powerful smash. Our guy feels sure he just heard some kind of voice, and when he looks at the man's shoulder, he spots something glowing. He wonders if that glow is the source of his insane power. But no matter how fast he tries to react, his body just won't move in time. Fortunately, luck sides with him, and before the next attack connects, the beast leaps in, slamming the green head to the ground, and holding him there with sheer force. The beast reminds our guy of the promise he made, and tells him to leave, while he keeps the psycho pinned down. The psycho laughs and asks if the beast really thinks he can hold him back. Choi Kyung understands the situation clearly, and quickly looks around, until he spots a cluster of gas cylinders, giving him a desperate idea. He quietly apologizes to his daughter, grabs the green head by the collar, and slams him into the cylinders, setting off a massive explosion that engulfs them both in a suicidal self-destruct. Meanwhile, the nerd and Duel are surrounded by the newly arrived men, one of whom licks his tongue with a wicked grin, clearly having some disturbing thoughts about the girl. Junio starts to panic, wondering who these new guys are, and what happened to Dahan, debates whether to take action, then removes his glasses and yells, as he launches an attack that clearly won't work. Fortunately, he turns out to be lucky, because Ryoga Yam has already arrived. Our guy calmly says this will only take a moment, as he prepares to deal with all of them, telling the two to get to safety. New guys begin to panic when they recognize Ryujin as the very threat their boss, Jaehyun, had warned them about, and they wonder how he even made it there. Back at the explosion site, the unfortunate president's face is half-burned, while the green head only has a few scratches. What angers him most, however, isn't the pain but the fact that his expensive clothes have been completely ruined. Later, Juno comes rushing back to the room, where it seems Ryo Jium is healing D1 and his brother. He uses such an exorbitant amount of strength that the shockwave literally spreads throughout the entire area, covered in sweat. He gives the news that they were not beyond saving. After all, meanwhile, DOOL does her best to care for her friend and offers her some water, but soon is clearly upset after hearing about her father from Ryujium. Knowing everyone will survive now, Juno feels glad they were fast enough to get here. But our boy says that is not the real reason they ran so quickly. The very next moment, there is a heavy knock on the door, and they have no idea who it could be. Back at the warehouse, the big boss himself arrives to see Ji Hyun and the chaos his subordinate caused, even in his horrible state. Choi Kyung asks his boss how he could possibly do this to him. Okian shows no emotion. He calmly sits down and questions what kind of relationship they truly have. The beast remembers a long time ago, when he was first recruited. Back then, Okian said he needed his help, which is why he wanted him to join the family. The beast repeats that one word, and Okian replies they were supposed to be one, until he started another family he cared more about. The boss explains that problems begin when you have too many mouths to feed. He used the drug operation to print more, and more money for his family. But that was never what the project was meant to be for. Putting that aside, he then asks the beast why he hid information about Ryujin. Choi Kyung is shocked his boss even knows about that, which really grinds Okian's gears. He fumes at how dumb his subordinates must think he is. He then mentions that one of them is currently paying the price for that mistake. Referring to Unhai, the man stares deep into his soul and orders Choi Kyung to spill everything he knows about Ray Jae-yoon. Right now, the beast almost breaks under the crushing pressure. but he still chooses to stay silent till the very end. Ok-Yun is visibly disappointed, so he gets up and walks away, while Ji-hyun executes his former comrade. Without hesitation, Ok-Yun remembers seeing Ray Jae-yoon with the president, and wonders what his next move should be, now that Rugium has the government backing him. Meanwhile, our boy requests the president to let the newly orphaned girl live in the home they gave to him. Seeing how downhearted Si-yoon looks, Dula offers her friend that they can still live together. If she wants hearing that, Si-yoon is honestly impressed by how kind she is, but she still refuses the offer because she wants to learn how to live on her own. From now on, the director looks a little uneasy about letting an aura farmer and a lonely girl live together at the peak of their youth, but our boy assures them there is nothing to worry about because he will soon be leaving on a long mission. The director panics because this is clearly not what they agreed on. Rio Game tells him to chill out, since he plans on coming back when the mission is done. Hearing that, the director cries to Papa President, but the president calmly silences him. He says if Ryujium gave his word to return, then they should trust him and offer our boy any assistance he might need. Someone give this man a medal, because the amount of respect he shows to our king earns him a deep bow from Ryujium, who has never bowed to anyone other than his master. The president asks where he is going. That reminds him of the time when Ji-hyun appeared, saying he came to fix Choi Kyung's disaster. At that time, the beast told him he was in no condition to face Okian's men yet. While he was not completely sure, the beast mentioned there might be a secret place somewhere in Baekdusian that could help him recover his former strength. The scene shifts to our boy in a misty forest near Baekdusian. He understands he can't throw hands with a monster like Ji-hyun now. He also needs to be in his peak condition if he wants to take Okian down next. As he wanders deeper into the forest, he suddenly feels a chilling breeze flowing from a giant opening at the base of a mountain. When he steps inside, his jaw drops to the floor at what he sees. Standing before him is a one-to-one copy that resembles him from 900. Long years ago, he scans the body carefully to confirm it really is a replica of himself. He is sure this is what Choi Kyung wanted him to find, but he still cannot shake the feeling that this is some kind of trap, surely enough. As soon as he reaches out to touch the clone, it immediately responds with a deadly strike that he barely dodges by a hair's width. He instantly shifts into his basic fist stance, but the clone mirrors him perfectly. My guy is in disbelief that someone other than him even knows about it. So he follows up with a max power one flash fist. But the clone meets him head on with the same technique and actually beats him at his own game. That leaves Ruji stunned and wondering how it is possible for a copy to overpower the original. The water beneath him suddenly starts freezing over as the clone approaches step by step. Just then the clone's face begins to shift, and our boy watches in absolute disbelief as it turns into a familiar face he has not seen in centuries. A long time ago, when he was just a kid, he used to follow around a wanderer who carried a big sword. That man simply called himself the Nameless One. Rujum first saw him and instantly realized how special he was when a man cut down a raging monster bear. With flawless technique, that bear was infamous for claiming the lives of 1,000 warriors. Similarly, the Nameless One also sensed something special about the boy, so he asked for his name from that day forward. The man trained him in every single technique he knew. When Ryu Jae-hyun had finally learned all he could, the Nameless One disappeared from his life. Without a trace, our boy never went after him either, because deep down he knew his master was a being beyond his comprehension. He never imagined he would see that man ever again. Not until this very moment. Ryujium asks his master what he is doing here, and if he is some kind of immortal being, but the Nameless One just laughs it off and says it is nothing special. He merely flows through time slower than others. The man admits his body is growing weaker and fading by the minute, but he still smiles because he had hoped they would meet again someday. He recalls the time he once saved a mighty, round fellow who could cosplay Kung Fu Panda. Their meeting was brief, but full of fun as they shared stories, some of which were about Rio Jam. The Nameless One met that big guy again 900 years later. He had a strong feeling he would also cross paths with his disciple once more. With that said, Ryugam asks his master the real reason he appeared here. The Nameless One calmly replies that it will take quite some time before he regains his former glory. Still, he cannot help but wonder why his disciple is so desperate to grow stronger. He is already far stronger than anyone in modern times. Kneeling on the cold ground, Ryojim explains that his mortal enemy awakened before him and became unbelievably powerful. That is why he needs to get stronger. As soon as possible, hearing that, the Nameless One smiles softly, saying fate really does have a cruel sense of humor. He then shares an old prophecy about the one who will stand as the last wall against evil that seeks to dominate the world. He believes that must be why he sensed something unique in Ryu Jayam. The first time they met, Master tells him to rise, because he still holds great hopes for the disciple he once trained. Meanwhile, in a dark, eerie room where Unhai is being kept captive, Okian enters complaining to her about how difficult it is to gather information on Rei Oi Jayam with the government protecting him. Seeing her confused expression, he reveals that he already knew she was working under Ryu Jayam. He sensed the man's chi lingering in her body. Back at the airport then, after the meeting with Choi Kyung, her terrified eyes made it painfully obvious that she feared becoming the same as him. Suddenly it all comes back to her. She remembers the moment she was knocked unconscious by his overwhelming energy. The memory scares her because she isn't sure just how powerful Okion has become. While Okion calmly asks her one last time where Ryujin is, Jihyun walks in, dragging the last body into the basement. Then he confirms her suspicion that the Choi Kyung she knows of no longer exists. He plunges his hand into the fresh corpse and says he was being merciful before, when he allowed Choi Kyung to retain his personality. But this time he has no intention of being that kind. He places the beast's original heart into the new vessel and unholy watches in pure terror as the flesh begins twisting and reshaping itself into a living body. She instantly recognizes it as the forbidden spell. Okian admits even he cannot perform it without suffering serious backlash. Then, with a smile that chills her to the bone, he gently pats her head and tells her to be a good girl and wait for his return. It seems he has something far more important to take care of. The scene shifts to Dahan and Minguk sitting together for dinner, where Big Bro tries to get him to eat. But Minguk refuses to touch anything, laid down by guilt over the mistake he made. Out of greed, Diwan tells him to drop it and just enjoy the feast he prepared. Minguk wonders just how his brother, who can barely cook an egg, managed to make something that actually looks good. Turns out the master chef behind the scenes is our boy, Juno. After dinner, Minguk learns it is Ryu Jiam they owe all this help to. He is the one making sure the brothers are cared for, which is why Dahan feels indebted to him. A few hours earlier, Ruijiam asked him to return the favor by finding out where Unhai is being held, as Dahan silently thinks about that. Minguk snaps, yelling at him for keeping so many secrets, and asks what really happened to Big Bro Ginal. His little brother demands to know everything and tells him to stop hiding behind half answers. But Diwan just smiles faintly and changes the subject, reminding them they will be late for school if they keep this up as they head out. Juno glances back and asks if he plans to go out for a job. Once they are gone, he warns Diwan to be careful until Riem returns, since the enemies they are facing now are on a whole different level than before. Speaking of the devil, Ji Hyun and his crew are already setting out on their own mission. At that exact moment, meanwhile, in a love hotel somewhere across the city, the famous actor Song Nam sits on the bed, scrolling through his phone, reading the headlines about his dating scandal with actress Harry. Being leaked, realizing his career is officially over. He looks over at her when she asks if he is ready. The guy decides there is no point turning back now, since he is already screwed. In the shower, Nam freezes when he hears the door creak open. His paranoia kicks in, but he assumes it is just Harry, trying to give him a playful head start. That assumption proves fatal when, instead of soft marshmallows, a cold blade penetrates in his back. Moments later, the goon drags him out, half-conscious, to meet their boss. Ji-hyun, the boss, tells the actor to shut his mouth, unless he wants another hole in him. Ji-hyun places a strange, buzzing device on the table and asks what kind of messed up things Nam is into. The actor insists he would never touch something like that, but Ji-hyun casually carves into his thigh and warns him to stick to the darn script. Once the blackmail video is recorded, Ji-hyun instructs him to vanish from social media for the next 5 months. More importantly, he warns Nam to reject the biggest role of his career, because that part is already reserved for someone else. Later, Ji-hyun's crew praises their boss for single-handedly taking down all rival actors, leaving every prime role wide open for Yoon-wook. Still, some of them wonder why he keeps targeting the competition when Yeon-woo is already sitting at the top. Ji-hyun smirks and says the boss told him his plan will begin only after he becomes the best of the best. Just then he realizes one of his men is missing. Another goon thinks the boss probably forgot and says he went to escort On-hye. Meanwhile, with On-hye, the blonde enforcer impatiently tells her to move it. But she just stands there in shock, still processing the horrifying truth that someone had actually managed to reanimate a human being into a clone. Okian once mentioned that the reanimation spell worked best when used right after death. That thought makes On-hye panic, fearing he intends to lock her in a dark room until she dies, just to turn her into a submissive clone. Memories flash through her mind of all those times she groveled and obeyed to survive. But this time, something in her snaps, and she suddenly stops moving. The guard frowns, asking what is wrong. He gets his answer a second later, when her illusion fades away, and the real On-hye drives a kick straight into his chest, sending him crashing, refusing to die as anyone's puppet. She slams her handcuffs into his face again and again. To finish him off, she uses her strongest illusion spell, knocking him completely unconscious. Canting, she spots his phone on the ground and manages to type out a short message before her strength fades. Just then, Ji-hyun hits it from the back, amused by the feisty chick who managed to take down one of his men. Collapsing on the floor, On-hye desperately prays. Her message reaches in time. Somewhere else, Dahan glances at his phone. He is confused to see a new message from an unknown number with 2 simple words, you. Yeon-woo. After thinking it through, Dahan theorizes if the message really came from On-hye, and why she would send something so vague. Just as he considers calling the number, his phone lights up, and the same number is calling him instead. When he answers with a cautious greeting, all he hears is mocking laughter. It turns out Ji-hyun mistook him for Ryu Jium, and he starts taunting Ryu Jium as a coward for hiding. Dahan says nothing, but Ji-hyun somehow catches on that it is not Ryu Jium. On the other end, even so, he give a warning to come find him in a week if he wants On-hye back alive. The next day, D-won spends every waking moment trying to figure out who Yeon-woo is. But the puzzle makes no sense, no matter how hard he tries. Tired and frustrated, he wonders if On-hye mentioned Yeon-woo, because he might be the one holding her. Then he recalls Ji-hyun's raspy voice, and suspects that all these events are connected. Deciding not to waste any more time, he believes he has to get close to Yeon-woo and learn the truth. Just then, a news headline catches his eye. The controversial announcement of Yeon-woo suddenly being cast as a lead actor. Finding that too suspicious, he heads to the now empty Shielder's office. The role Yeon-woo took once belonged to Nam, the actor, who was the company's client for protection services, before breaking into the CEO's office Dahan freezes when he sees shelves stacked with countless files. Before he can decide where to start, a flashlight hits his face. Luckily, it turns out to be one of his old subordinates, the overly loyal gangster from his squad. With that, the two search through the records together. Dahan cannot help but feel proud that his men always show up when he needs them. The Sunday gangster insists he only came for his own reasons, but admits he is glad to see his leader again. After a while, Dahan finally finds what he is looking for, Nam's personal contact information. He arranges a meeting with the actor after that, but Nam flat out refuses to say anything, terrified as he warns that the people who attacked him are far too dangerous clever as always. Dahan plays his cards right and tricks the kid into believing the CK. Shielders are ready to back him up. If anything goes down, he offers his card and Nam almost takes it. But then the memories come crashing back. The actor says he cannot do it no matter what. He is worried because those bastards already made a career-ending video of him committing a disgusting crime. Hearing that, Dahan realizes he cannot convince the kid, using the usual tricks, switching gears. He remembers there was also an actress involved in the scandal, and casually asks if she is safe. He was expecting some kind of reaction, but just hearing Harry's name turns Nam into an emotional wreck. A few days later, it is the last day of Ji-hyun's 1-week deadline. He taunts Eun-hye, asking if she really thought anyone would come. To save her useless self with a sick grin, the psycho promises she will get to say goodbye to their chopped-off heads before he is done with her. His messed-up attitude fuels her rage, but Ji-hyun enjoys it, saying he loves that angry little face she is making. He mentions his surprise that half of the 4 men who swore loyalty to Awakens betrayed him without hesitation. Suddenly his phone rings. One of his lackeys reports an unexpected problem. Turns out Nam is streaming live to announce that he will be taking the lead role again, and that news sends shock waves through the fan base. Meanwhile, the kid in the pink hoodie is losing it completely, realizing he streamed his exact location, just like Dahan told him to, when Nam nervously asks if the freaks really won't release his tape. Dahan shrugs like it is none of his business. He reminds Nam that this was the gamble he chose to take. For his girlfriend's sake, the only promise Daewon makes is that he will personally make sure those sick bastards behind everything regret it for life back with Ji-hyun. He snaps at his men to hurry and track down that little rat. His subordinate says they already sent their fastest member of the crew. When that guy finally corners the pink hoodie brat, he calmly asks what the kid is planning. But the so-called kid suddenly replies in a deep voice that he was honestly tired of waiting around. Turns out it is not Nam at all, but Big Brother Dahan himself. The guy demands he reveal who he really is. But Daewon is too busy connecting the dots between Yeonwoo and this gang. He realizes this man is part of the crew, handling all his dirty work. Eun-hye's message also confirms his suspicion that she was probably captured by the same people. With a no-nonsense attitude, the thug orders Daewon to give him Nam's location. The clever bastard even figures out that the real actor is most likely watching from somewhere nearby. On the phone, Nam tells Daewon that this guy is just a goon, and the one holding his confession tape is a higher-up. So Daewon asks to be taken straight to the boss. To his surprise, the guy strolls past him and tells him to follow along. Watching from the corner, Nam's eyes go wide as the man suddenly disappears into thin air. He reappears right behind him, and Dahan barely intercepts in time before Nam gets snatched. His powerful kick sends a psycho flying into the water, giving Nam the chance to run for his life and find a place to hide. Dahan can tell from that single kick that this guy is built different. Sure enough, the maniac bursts out of the water again, annoyed that Dahan got him wet. Meanwhile, Ryujin's master suddenly tells him to follow somewhere, and with every step he takes, the scenery around him begins to change, until he's walking inside the phantasm of his memories. His master gives him a simple task: reach the other side of the valley. Rujum starts walking through the shallow water and feels a sense of familiarity wash over him. The sights and the scent around him stir something old within. Just then he sees some of his old friends hanging out and wonders how they ended up here. The guys are confused by his question, and they tell him it's time for dinner. After all that training out of nowhere, the women from his mistress's clan bring out food for the hard-working warriors, and the group rushes in excitement. Watching all of it brings a faint smile to his face, and for the first time in ages, he feels genuinely happy to see everyone alive and kicking, to land the final blow on his melting heart. His mistress suddenly appears and pulls him into a tight embrace, softly telling him it is time to go home. He falls to his knees just as his master predicted, because this was no doubt the hardest trial for him yet. The trial also gives him post-nut clarity. Being trapped in the past is exactly why he never reached his true potential. His master watches closely, waiting to see which path he will walk. Without a moment's hesitation, the Aura farmer leaves behind everything precious to him for the sake of a brighter future, where he beats the life out of Okian. Speaking of Okian, the boss invites Ji Hyun to dinner. But when Ji Hyun thanks him for the fine meal, Okian coldly asks, when he doesn't recall giving permission to eat. The peasant quickly apologizes for his slip-up, and Okian bursts out laughing, because he was just busting his chops. Ji Hyun insists that everything is under control with the actor kid, and says they still have plenty of time before shooting begins. Okian is not convinced, but his secretary steps in and assures him that, even if the unreliable fool screws up, she already has a backup plan ready. Ji Hyun grits his teeth after hearing that foxy manager, Shim Gaon, talk trash about him again anyway. Okian tells him to get the job done, with his $50 billion budget. With that, Ji Hyun leaves the room and calls his guy Young Sung. He asks what the hell is taking so long. Meanwhile, Young Sung is busy pinning Daehan against a pole, explaining that everything was going smoothly, until a cutie got in his way. Seeing his guy drop for a second, Daehan drives a clean hit right in his rib cage, sending him flying into the wall. But the monster does not even flinch. Ji Hyun yells at him to stop playing around with this cutie and just finish the darn job. So Young Sung tears off his shirt, showing off his jacked biceps and the strange rings embedded in his body, saying it's time to go all out. Okran-style Dahan just stares completely puzzled, wondering if the guy is trying to pull some kind of power move. A moment later, Young Sung suddenly lunges forward, grabs his face, and slams it into the ground with bone-crushing force. You see, Young Sung's body was modified in some shady underground lab by a team of shady surgeons. The director in charge ordered them to fill his body with implants, designed to enhance his control over joints and muscles. These modifications gave him absurd physical strength, around 100 times greater than any normal human. They gave their implants the fancy name of servo joints. Young Sung looks pretty satisfied with the power output, surpassing his expectations, and the brutal impact sound makes one wonder if D1 just got flattened. But let's get one thing straight. Big Brother ain't that weak. Dahan mocks him, calling him a pitiful tool relying on mechanical scraps. But the truth is he only survived that hit because he used the steel body technique. At the last second, seems like Dahan didn't walk into this fight blind. Either earlier, while digging through some files, looking for Nam's phone number, he stumbled upon a hidden safe, tucked behind the bookshelf. Inside, he found an old martial arts manual. Back in the present, he launches Young Sung with monstrous strength, revealing that he intentionally waited until the very last day of Unhai's deadline. To master his techniques, the Bloody Boar Fist is just one of the many martial arts he learned. In those past 5 days, the scene then shifts to our boy, standing at the site of his second trial, beside his master. The moment his master places a hand on his chest, he is instantly transported into a vast, empty sky as he stares around in confusion. at an island made of 3 land masses, arranged like something straight out of Attack on Titan. His master explains that this is the realm where chi veins connect heaven and earth. In simpler terms, it's an insanely cold place where the flow of chi and martial energy is heavily restrained. Time crawls here, but the monsters that adapted to this land are anything but slow. The only way Rujion can survive is by using the sword given to him. The moment he grips the hilt, ice starts wrapping around his hand. His master calmly explains that, while his mind is strong, his body is still an unfinished vessel. Sure enough, our boy feels a crushing pressure descend upon him, and every single step forward turns into a grueling struggle. To make matters worse, the freezing cold is hammering him, both physically and mentally. But the beast couldn't care less about his suffering. Our boy dives straight in, determined to take them down, before his body completely gives out. Shifting back to Dahan, he's trading blow after blow with young Sung, using every martial art technique he picked up to keep the fight even after a while. Dung Sung the Lizette, brute strength won't cut it against this guy, so he shifts gears and relies on pure speed. But even that doesn't work. Dahan finally loses patience and shouts at him to end this ridiculously long fight. Already high on adrenaline, young Sung starts running through every possible move in his head, thinking of a way to drop him. That's when he finally notices Dahan hasn't been throwing random punches at all. Big Brother's been targeting his leg joints. From the start, young Sung grins in amazement at the guy's genius tactic. Convinced he's figured Dahan out completely, he smugly invites Big Brother to land one last attack on him, running on fumes. Dahan gathers every last drop of strength left in his body for his next strike when he gets in range. Yun Sung calls checkmate as he smashes Dahan's head straight into the ground, or so he thought while he is left, wondering why Dahan didn't go for the legs again. A hand suddenly grabs his face from behind. For a split second, Dahan gives him a heads up that he is about to experience the technique used to crush mountains when he unleashes it. The destructive force caves in young Sung's skull, sending blood bursting from both ears. Even then the monster stands, saying he won't go down that easily, and swings one more time, but his sense of balance is shot, and he collapses on the spot. Dahan reveals this was his plan all along. Without hesitation, he grabs the half-conscious brute and dives straight into the water below. Back at HQ, Ji-hyun's crew is irritated, wondering why Yun Sung still hasn't reported back, since he is supposed to be their fastest. One of them warns the rest to behave, since the boss is returning in a seriously bad mood. Just then the blonde guy pauses, saying he could have sworn he saw something flash outside the window, but he thinks it was just his imagination, since no one in their right mind would break into Yan Wu's private villa, the one Ji-hyun's crew is using as a base temporarily. Down in the basement, Unhai freezes when she hears a voice calling from the other side of the door. Standing outside, Han makes it just in time, before the 1-week deadline runs out. Meanwhile, in the other world, our boy keeps fighting through endless waves of monsters, each passing hour equal to a full year on Earth, with every bone shattered and muscle torn apart. The only thing keeping Ryojim alive is raw survival instinct. After what feels like an eternity, he finally wipes out the last monster in the area, using nothing but his sword. He raises his head to the sky and declares that he's ready to have his vessel appraised once again, but when nothing happens, he frowns, wondering if he missed something. Just then the ground beneath him turns into water, and he suddenly plummets off the floating island. He crashes into another island, covered mostly in water, sinking deep below its surface, praying he hasn't been thrown straight into the final trial. Right after the second one, back with Dahan, he cracks open the basement lock using his bare hands. He can't help but question if Unhai is even important to the kidnappers, considering they left her tied up alone, with 0 guards watching over her. But then he sees something no man's ever seen before. Unhai desperately denies she was crying, even though her face says it all. Setting that aside, Diwan hurries to escort her out, knowing both of them don't have the strength left for another fight against Jahian's men. Just as they reach the exit, Jahian appears from behind out of nowhere. Dahan instantly backs off and demands to know who this guy is. But before he can say more, Unhai cuts, offers to become an obedient underling to Jahian if he agrees to let Dahan go. Hearing that, Jahian agrees surprisingly fast and tells Dahan he's free to go. What he doesn't mention, however, is the squad of modified humans closing in from behind. Dahan refuses to retreat and braces himself for one last push. But a single uppercut to the chin sends him flying. As he barely manages to stand after the crushing blow, Jahian orders his guy to finish the job for good. The blonde guy lunges straight at him, ready to bash his head in with a crowbar. But right at the last second, Minguk and Juno crash through the wall. Like superheroes, Minguk props Jahian over his shoulder and admits they've been following him the whole time. Ji-hyun's men try to rush the loudmouths for trespassing on their turf, but a quick strike from a nerd sends the fools flying. The guy in the cap freezes in disbelief, wondering how this kid is pulling off master-level martial arts. He is clueless that Ryo James trained Juno for moments exactly like this, by teaching him the blood flash fist. When Juno first blew a hole through a wall, trying it out, our boy told him the technique would hit even harder. Once fully mastered, the drawback is that it burns through an insane amount of chi and causes unbearable pain. Curious, Juno once asked how many times it could be used, and the answer was 2 at best. Having already used it twice, Juno feels his strength slipping away, but he knows there's no other choice left. Watching him get into stance, Minguk can't believe he is really going to do it. As Juno unleashes his ultimate technique, Cap Guy brace himself for impact. Bro whips out a can of pepper spray, gives the thugs a generous blast, and sprints for his life. Ji-hyun's gang screams in agony, and the boss watches in disappointment as Unhai and the others dash for the exit. Juno shouts for everyone to keep running and not look back, but Ji-hyun's gang quickly recovers and pins all of them down. Cap Guy is furious that they made a laughing stock out of them, while the others are eager to crush their heads. However, Ji-hyun suddenly kicks his own men off the hostages, and the last thing they see is their boss, flying straight at them, after ruthlessly beating his team to the ground. Ji-hyun regrets wasting millions of dollars worth of technology on useless fools. Since the implants can be salvaged, the psycho declares he will dispose of them himself for committing the unforgivable sin of disturbing his peace. Seeing that, Minguk and Dahan freeze in terror, while Unhai watches the angel of death descend toward her from above. With all his implants running at maximum capacity, YE et on unleash a destructive explosion that nearly blows the entire building apart. But when nothing actually happens, the boss stands frozen in disbelief. Just then a voice echoes through the room, praising everyone for holding out this long. The king of Aura has returned, and he tells his gang to hold on for just a little longer because he'll be done fast.